Chapter 626. The mighty and extraordinary giant covered dustless. The simple and heavy armor was clearly visible, covering the giant's body. However, this giant was obviously not at its peak state, it was more like a miniature version, some of its limbs were obviously incomplete. But even so, her exaggerated figure still made people feel terrified and hopeless. The evil golden light was beyond imagination. Under the cover of the light, one would feel suffocated. The mighty and extraordinary iron fist was enough to smash a large mountain. Can you stand up this time? But it seems that you can't. Dustless sighed as Green Pepper under the ruins did not move. He had tried his best to control Kisunu's strength. He was hoping that this strong old man could play for a while, but it seemed that Dustless thought too much. Kaka? There was a throbbing sound from the ruins and then it collapsed one after another. Then Green Pepper could be seen crawling out of it. He was in a mess and his whole body was bleeding. His bloody appearance was as if he had just run out of a pool full of blood. It's really scary to look like this. It seems that you still want to continue to fight. Why don't you just lie on the ground and wait for me to put the iron cuffs on you, and then escort you to Impel Down? Dustless sighed in distress. There was a world of difference between them, but he still struggled and suffered physical pain. Why should he ask for it? How can I just stand there and wait to be captured? This old man also has a dream. Boom boom boom. Before Green Pepper's voice fell, the golden rainbow fell from the sky and forcibly suppressed him. The bright light mercilessly crushed Green Pepper's huge body, pressing him into the ground. Kaka? Unable to withstand the brutal force, the ground constantly cracked and trembled. The huge cracks crazily swallowed the surrounding ground, mercilessly destroying the surrounding environment. After a while, the golden light condensed and formed, revealing Dustless's figure, his eyes indifferently looking at Green Pepper under his feet. His eyes were as cold as ice. People who talk about dreams are people who have the same strength. Before you talk about dreams in front of me, you should first think about how to escape from Impel Down. Don't talk like this, it's just a joke. Dustless's words were like a thorn that pierced deeply into Green Pepper's heart. His eyes were locked onto Dustless's face, as if he wanted to engrave that cold face of his into his heart forever. The look in your eyes. Is that a silent protest? Dustless asked as he stared at Green Pepper's eyeballs, which were about to pop out of their sockets. Hearing this, Kon Shinjo seemed to have accepted his fate. He removed the armament hockey state, revealing his bloody body. Between his words, he was exhausted. I used to hear that the new Marine Admiral was a monster. I always thought it was an exaggeration. Now it seems that it is not a lie. Gasping, Don Shinjo said inexplicably. Dustless couldn't help but raise his eyebrows, indifferently looking at Don Shinjo under his feet. What do you want to say? He always felt that this guy's words had a hidden meaning. Don Shinjo's eyes were vaguely sneering, which made Dustless's eyes flash fiercely. A mere stray dog dares to be so arrogant. Ka ka ka. With a sudden force on one foot, there was a crisp roar. Dustless mercilessly stepped on Don Shinjo's head. His originally sharp head was once again stepped back to its original shape by Dustless. He turned back to the bald man of the past. If that's the case, you should be more obedient. If not, I don't mind adding some more meat. Dustless sneered as he looked at Don Shinjo's limbs with cold eyes. Boom boom boom. The sound of countless cannons suddenly spread, and the sea around Sabaody was densely packed with pirates, mercilessly shelling the entire Sabaody archipelago. Indiscriminate shelling covered the entire island. Ordinary civilians are also being targeted. Seeing this, Dustless slightly frowned. This intensive shelling, including the ordinary civilians who were not involved, was also involved in this huge shelling. Aware that his head returned to its original shape, Don Shinjo's killing intent rose, and he was about to fight with Dustless again, but the stinging pain all over his body made him grimace in pain. He intended to resist, but he couldn't launch a sneak attack. Civilians? So what? This old man is a pirate, not a marine. Don Shinjo sneered. As a pirate, he only has himself in his eyes. There is no need to worry about the life and death of others. This is the most basic principle of being a pirate. Stubborn resistance. Don Shinjo hopelessly glanced at Don Shinjo. If he didn't guess wrong, those battleships that shelled the Sabaody archipelago were Don Shinjo's subordinates, or pirates attached to them. Leave it to me, just freeze all of them. At this moment, Kazan's slightly tired voice came, and his tone was full of exhaustion. Dustless's face was full of doubts. Kazan's strength was almost the same as an admiral, but his tired appearance and even the corners of his clothes had many holes. It was obvious that he had encountered a top powerhouse. Your state. What the hell is going on? Hell King, Rayleigh should be restrained by Sakazuki. Staring at the slightly embarrassed Kazan, Dustless was puzzled. On this island, only Hell King Rayleigh is a top powerhouse. In the future, when he was old, he could fight Kizaru, and now he is still young, naturally he can fight Admiral. Kazan's expression was stiff and there was a flash of embarrassment. He scratched his head and said, "Suddenly a guy with a red nose attacked me. That guy's ability is very strange, his body can split into 4 or 5 parts." Thinking of that strange ability, Kazan was quite surprised. Red nose? Split into 4 or 5 parts. This time it was Dustless's face that was strange, a red nose that split into 4 or 5 parts. This is obviously the great god Bucky. Then on second thought, Dustless was relieved. Anyway, he was also a crew member of One Piece and had been through hundreds of battles. It was normal for him to hide his strength and scheme. The crew members who used to follow the Pirate King were all first-class experts. The last time he rode on Bucky's battleship, Dustless vaguely felt that there was something wrong with the old guy. Chapter 627. Although he doesn't understand what Buggy's purpose is, judging from the treachery of the world government, the Gorosei will never arrange a weak clown as Shichibukai, for no reason. There must be some unknown secret in it. After hearing Kazan's words, Dustless suddenly realized that the situation around Buggy the Clown was indeed somewhat illogical. Watertight is not an unintentional mistake. Sometimes it is because it is too perfect that mistakes are made. Dustless saw this epitome in Buggy the Clown now. Perfection is also a failure. Boom! Harsh explosions rang out, and the sea around the Sabaody archipelago was bombarded by a large number of pirate ships, and the civilians of the Sabaody archipelago fled like rats crossing the street. Hey, it's really troublesome. I thought it would be a pleasant task. These pirates are really tricky. Looking far away, Akiji saw that the distant sea was full of battleships, and he quickly swept over. He only needed to use his Ice Age on the sea to freeze the surrounding sea, and these pirates would be like turtles in a jar. It's a pity? Dustless looked down at Don Chinjo and said abruptly. Don Chinjo's face was black, and he simply ignored the existence of Dustless and buried his old face in the ground. It seems that the monotonous ground is better than Dustless's face. Seeing this, Dustless just smiled. Your apprentice beat the celestial dragons and robbed the devil fruit auctioned by Charles Ross. If he was caught, I don't need to say it. You know what the end would be. It's lucky to be executed directly. Dustless said. The speaker didn't mean it, but the listener took it seriously. Green Pepper's old face changed subtly. Of course, it's the luckiest thing to be executed directly. With the cruelty of the celestial dragons, it's normal to cut him into pieces and then throw him into the sea to feed the sea kings. Dustless continued to add fuel to the fire. Celestial dragons are arrogant and look down on everyone. In their eyes, humans are just inferior creatures. To put it bluntly, humans all over the world are their entertainment. Although it sounds a bit exaggerated, the world of celestial dragons is like this. What are you trying to say? Green Pepper asked in an unfriendly manner. Every time Dustless talked about the habits of the celestial dragons, Cone Green Pepper's heart became more and more depressed. Once his disciple was captured alive, he would inevitably be dismembered by the furious celestial dragons. In fact, what I want to say is very simple: obey me and I have something for you to do. If not, I will give your apprentice to the celestial dragons and you can imagine the end. If you are willing to obey me in the future, I will let you go safe and sound, and so will your apprentices. Dustless smiled evilly, full of coercion. When Don Chinjo was in his heyday, he was a big pirate with a bounty of more than 500 million berries. His strength was self-evident. Garp needed to personally deal with him. He fought with Admiral with ease. Dustless's current subordinates, except for Hawkeye who can suppress him, it is estimated that no one is his opponent. Although Doflamingo was strong, it was still some distance away from its peak. Are you threatening me? Don Chinjo asked angrily. Golden waves swept out, and the suffocating Haushiko-haki was oppressive and suffocating. I am indeed threatening you. Dustless smiled happily and frankly admitted it. Between life and death, choosing the wrong choice would mean stepping into hell. Choosing the right choice would allow one to ascend to the heavens. It all depended on how one chose. My apprentice hit the celestial dragons. Even if you are a marine admiral, you can't pardon them. Don Chinjo did not refuse but chose to retort. The identity of a marine admiral is scary enough, but he is still a lackey for the celestial dragons. Even some pirates in the New World ridiculed the marine admiral as the most loyal lackey of the celestial dragons. Where the celestial dragons are on fire, the marine admiral is responsible for extinguishing the fire there. Is it? What if I am also a celestial dragon? Dustless asked jokingly. To some extent, The law of the world is built according to the will of the celestial dragons to satisfy their selfish desires and have great power. Even if a few pirates are released, it doesn't matter. Nonsense, do you think this old man is a 3-year-old child? The whole world knows that the celestial dragons are incompetent straw bags. His eyes widened, and the words that came to his mouth stopped abruptly. Don Chinjo looked at the corner of Dustless's torn clothes in horror. You are really a celestial dragon? Are you kidding me? Aren't they all incompetent straw bags? His rolling eyes suddenly lost their focus and was replaced by shock, and then he took a deep breath. Don Chinjo looked at Dustless's exposed coat. The uniform that only a celestial dragon dares to wear is not fake. Pretending to be a celestial dragon? The entire world government has been around for more than 800 years, and no one has been so bold. How about? Agree to my conditions and go to heaven, refuse me? It's not impossible, but you have to be prepared in advance that your apprentice will be torn to pieces. Dustless said with a smile. Don Chinjo's old face turned green when he heard this. He was completely in a passive state and could only follow Dustless's nose. If he refuses, the apprentice who attacked the celestial dragons will be finished at any time. Agree? This is naturally even more impossible. He was beaten by Dustless, and now he has to beg for mercy in front of him. Don Chinjo's arrogant self-esteem can't stand it, and he can't accept it. For a time he was in a dilemma. It was like a person suddenly beating you up and then using despicable means to make you be his obedient son. Moreover, it was the kind that you had to be. Aggrieved, uncomfortable, unwilling, hatred. All kinds of expressions solidified on Don Chinjo's face. For a moment he almost vomited blood. He has never felt so resentful in his life. As an admiral of the Marine, how can you be so despicable? Don Chinjo asked angrily. In his heart he was so angry that he cursed. This kind of person should be killed by a heavenly punishment. The Marine who boasted of absolute justice unexpectedly produced such a shameless and dirty villain like Dustless. God is simply blind. Chapter 628. Green Pepper's heart wavered and he was in a dilemma. He could not swallow the humiliation of being Wu Chen's lackey. He had been slapped in the face, yet he still had to bow down like a grandson. He could not swallow this humiliation. Zhuiji Green Pepper was also a world-famous great thief. How could he be willing to accept this? However, if he didn't obey Dustless, only death awaited him. The cruelty and coldness of the celestial dragons was well known to the world. Things that they fancied would be snatched by coercive means. Now that Charles fancied his apprentice, there was no other way except to be torn to pieces by the exposed celestial dragons. Are you still hesitating? My time waits for no one. Wasting other people's time for no reason is tantamount to murder for money. Seeing Green Pepper's face twitching, Dustless said softly, If you refuse my conditions, I don't mind calling that fat pig Chalmers here right now, and I'll cut you into pieces in front of your face. Dustless smiled devilishly. The cold smile hanging on the corner of his mouth was particularly horrifying, making one's scalp tingle. You devil. Green Pepper said in a trembling voice. Wu Chen's cruel and callous appearance was obviously not a joke. Only the word demon could replace him. If one offended someone like Wu Chen, they would be in a situation where they could neither live nor die. Speed decides, I don't have time to listen to your nonsense. After spending half a day, Dustless also lost his patience. Green Pepper heard this and quickly exchanged glances. After thinking hard, he finally nodded heavily. As the saying goes, a bad life is better than a good death. In addition, he also didn't want his disciple, who had followed him for a lifetime, to be brutally dismembered by the celestial dragons and fed to the sea kings. You know your place. Dustless said leisurely as he withdrew his foot from Green Pepper's back. Green Pepper's strength couldn't be underestimated. He was at the level of a general. Such a powerful person was the subordinate that Dustless needed at the moment. It was perfect to use him to carry out some secret missions. It wasn't easy for this old man to recover my head, but it's been beaten back to its original form again. Green Pepper said in distress as he rubbed his head. This was the most tragic thing in life. After being beaten up, he could only swallow his anger. What was even more tragic was that he had become the other party's underling. He suddenly felt that all the bad luck in the world had fallen on his head. Allah. It's a group of vicious murderers. If I don't take care of you, the marshal won't let me off easily. On the shore of the Sabaody archipelago, Kazan frowned. Pirates were hateful, and this group of people who slaughtered weak civilians were even more hateful in Kazan's eyes. Bullying the weak and fearing the strong was also the type of people he hated the most. With a leap, 2 icicles extended from his arms and smashed into the sea. I say on. As Kazan's voice fell, the entire surface of the sea suddenly froze into ice. The ice quickly spread in all directions and froze the entire sea in an instant. The boundless area was stupefying, and the rumbling of the cannons stopped abruptly. This old man has seen that little devil before. Dustless and Don Chinjo were secretly watching the movements on the sea. Don Chinjo recognized Kazan at a glance. When he fought with Garp, he was there. His superb freezing ability was world famous. I've never seen a pirate flag. Where did this clown come from? Eyebrows slightly raised, Dustless puzzled. At first he thought that this was Don Chinjo's subordinates, but now it seems that he thought too much. A pirate flag that he had never seen before was obviously a passerby type. There are many people in the Sabaody archipelago. This old man only brought a few apprentices. Before, I said that I would bombard the Sabaody archipelago, but this old man was just fooling the Marines. Don Chinjo said proudly. The apprentices who came with him had been secretly arranged to leave. Don Chinjo was wearing large black handcuffs. Before, he had beaten Dustless to the point where he couldn't fight back. Naturally, he couldn't just let him go. He needed the right opportunity. The mission has been completed. Only this group of minions is left. His eyes swept straight into the distance. The frozen ships in front of them could no longer move. They were like turtles in a jar. They could be annihilated anytime and anywhere. The distance is quite far. Let me send you on your way. This lonely and boring mission should be over. Wu Chen's eyes turned, emitting a clear and cold light. Suddenly, several green spheres floated behind him. It was very mysterious. At the same time, Dustless's body also changed and was swallowed by an emerald light. If you can die under this move, you can rest in peace in the underworld. When his voice fell, several green beads behind him floated in front of Dustless and then strangely liquefied, turning into a bright golden light condensed in Dustless's right hand. Don Chinjo's pupils suddenly shrank. Although the light in Dustless's hand was very small, it gave him an unprecedented sharpness. It seemed that the whole world could be split. Stop here. His arms suddenly raised high and pointed to a large number of frozen pirate ships in the distance. Immediately, without hesitation, the light in his hand extended countless times in an instant. Golden wheel reincarnation explosion. An earth-shattering beam of light swept out. The endless light ignored distance. In front of it, even the ends of the earth would be useless. They would still be within the attack range. Boom, 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 the light beam slashed down and the dense pirate group in the distance was suddenly annihilated. The whole sea was horribly split open with a gap of tens of kilometers. It was boundless. Gulp. Don Chinjo was stunned and swallowed his saliva. His eyes flashed with fear and dissatisfaction. He felt a chill down his spine. He knew that this was Dustless's demonstration in disguise. If he wanted to be lucky, even if he was at the end of the earth, he would be killed by this unprecedented move. Really, I tried my best to hold back, but he still created such a large-scale attack. It really is a difficult technique to control. Dustless was quite depressed. Chapter 629. Trying to hold back, not going all out? Green Pepper's old face turned green. Dense black lines hung on his forehead. He cursed in his heart as the corners of his mouth twitched. He clenched his teeth tightly to prevent himself from being killed by Dustless if he roared out loud. This guy is too annoying. Not only did he destroy all the pirates in one move, but he also said that he was trying to hold back, not going all out. Especially Dustless's reluctant look made Don Chinjo uncomfortable, and he couldn't help but feel injustice for the group of people who were killed by Dustless. Killing all the pirates of others, but in the end, he looked like he was wronged and couldn't exert his full strength. It was really despicable. Don Chinjo shook his head. Maybe after his subordinates and himself were killed, Dustless would have the same expression. In that case, it would be too unfair to die. Looking straight ahead, the sea that was frozen by Akiji before had a giant crack of tens of kilometers in length. The whole sea was strangely separated and couldn't heal. This incredible scene was scary. Worthy of being the youngest admiral. Kazan ran over and flattered with a smile on his face. It seemed that only the smile on his face could hide the shock deep in his face. This shocking attack was beyond the imagination of the world. Even if the Pirate King came back from the dead, he may not be able to do such a terrible thing. Kazan felt a chill run down his spine when he thought of the several dozen kilometer-long crack in the sea. He looked at the scattered sea surface with fear and trepidation. If it hit a person, that guy Sakazuki doesn't seem to be done yet. But that's right, the opponent is Rayleigh, he should be suppressed miserably. Kazan chuckled, and there was a hint of schadenfreude. Water and fire are two elements that are difficult to coexist, and Kazan and Sakazuki are quite incompatible now. The ideas of the two were completely opposite. In order to maintain the rule of the government, Sakazuki could sacrifice anyone. Compared to the benevolent and lazy Kazan, it was a world of difference. It was also destined that the two would have sparks in some areas. I don't think he's much better. Nether King is still young and full of energy. Sakazuki might not be his match. Dustless analyzed, his eyes sparkling. When the king of the underworld, Rayleigh, fought against the young Sakazuki, Wuchen did not think that the latter's chances of winning were high. Sakazuki might be able to defeat Rayleigh during the War of the Underworld, but he was still too young. As the vice-captain of One Piece, Rayleigh's strength is beyond doubt. He definitely has the strength of an admiral. On the other hand, Sakazuki is still a vice-admiral. Although he has the strength of an admiral, he still has a long way to go to defeat Rayleigh. As for Don Chinjo, he was already escorted to the battleship by the Marines. The route was naturally to impel down. A big pirate like Don Chinjo was either executed or escorted to impel down. However, Dustless had already secretly prepared something for him to escape. Time flew by, and in the blink of an eye, another 4 hours passed quietly. The sun had already set, and the fiery red clouds of dawn covered the world. The seawater was exceptionally beautiful. "What are you looking at? Haven't you seen me injured?" In the temporary tent, Sakazuki roared in a hoarse voice. He always felt that these marine soldiers were looking at him strangely. His temper was already quite irritable, so he suddenly roared. Dustless looked at Sakazuki playfully. If he could, he would have taken a picture of him right now. His crimson suit was full of holes, and there were clear bloodstains on his arms. There were some bloodstains at the corner of his mouth. The flamboyant corsage he wore was also half burnt. No wonder Sakazuki was so pissed. That damn old man is as strong as a sea king. Sakazuki showed a rare look of shock. Rayleigh's powerful physical strength was beyond his imagination. In terms of physical strength, only the Marines' hero Garp could beat Rayleigh. Dustless nodded undeniably and then said, "Don't worry about Rayleigh. That guy has retired from the world. If we don't take the initiative to provoke him, he shouldn't take the initiative to trouble us." Kazan and Sakazuki also nodded. The reason why they met Rayleigh this time was because Sakazuki was on a whim. As a result, they were suppressed by the young and energetic Rayleigh. The current 3 admirals are still weak, and there is a gap between them and the future. Otherwise they would be equal to Rayleigh. The task given by Sengoku has been completed. You go back to the Marine headquarters. I should go back to Mariewa. Hearing this, Sakazuki and Kazan both showed envious eyes. As a celestial dragon, Dustless moved freely and unrestrained. He was much more leisurely than their busy officers. They couldn't find the right time to be lazy. After about an hour or so, the entire Sabaody archipelago finally returned to quiet, and the big and small pirates were cleaned up. During this period, Charo's sister, the female celestial dragon Shalulia, came to ask for Don Chinjo and others. As a result, she was collared by Dustless in a strange way. In the end, she ran away crying in fear. She didn't even have time to take off the collar on her neck. Wu Chen's reputation was in disarray. He could really do such a crazy thing to find a female celestial dragon as a slave. Dustless was helpless. At night, a biting cold wind blew from the sea, and the marine battleship escorting Don Chinjo quickly sneaked away. "Are you finally here? I'm dying of anxiety. Impel Down is not a place for people to stay." On the mast, Don Chinjo, who was shackled with iron chains, suddenly opened his eyes and looked at White Zetsu, who suddenly appeared in front of him. He was really afraid that Dustless would play with him and take him to Impel Down. In that kind of dark place, it is extremely difficult to breathe. "Dustless, Sama will not forget what he promised you." Glancing at Don Chinjo, White Zetsu opened the iron shackles that bound Don Chinjo. Chapter 630. Don Chinjo nodded ecstatically and then jumped into the sea without hesitation. White Zetsu's clone had been waiting for a long time to pick him up on a boat. It has to be said that the quality of the marine soldiers trained by Sengoku was good. Hearing the sound of falling into the water, a large group of Marines quickly ran out of the cabin and looked at Don Chinjo, who had disappeared. Many smart Marines knew that Don Chinjo did not escape. They used lights to illuminate the entire sea. Don Chinjo disappeared in an instant and they picked up guns to attack him. However, the effect was negligible. Things like guns and cannons are just an insignificant itch for pirates who have more than 500 million berries. Wanting to hurt Don Chinjo is a fantasy, tantamount to a fool's dream. The number one criminal of the marine ran away. This crime must be carried by someone. Sengoku naturally can't blame Dustless. This matter has nothing to do with him, not to mention he is a celestial dragon, so he can only say, "What are you two doing?" The next morning, in the Marine Headquarters Fleet Admiral's office, Sengoku's angry roar resounded. At this moment, Kazan and Sakazuki were being mercilessly scolded by Sengoku. It must be their turn to carry the blame. A living Don Shinjo ran away. Because of you two, the Marine will be labeled as incompetent, Sengoku said while staring at Sakazuki and Kazan. If Don Shinjo was an ordinary criminal, it wouldn't be a big deal. With such an unprecedented strength, there is no doubt about the destruction he made. What made Sengoku gloomy the most is that he spent a lot of money to ask Wuchin to come out, but in the end, Don Shinjo ran away. The Marine headquarters didn't even get a chicken feather in the end, and because of Don Shinjo's escape, they will be labeled as incompetent and useless. Just thinking about it made Sengoku's stomach ache. It's ridiculous. How did that guy do it? I remember to lock him in handcuffs and shackles, and because I was worried, I tied his whole body with a special iron chain. Kazan was puzzled. Sakazuki frowned and nodded. Obviously, he also had deep doubts about this accident. The cooked duck flew away. It was more uncomfortable than eating 10 pounds of flies. Did I deliberately let him go? Sengoku rolled his eyes and asked with an angry smile. Waving his hand, Sengoku was too lazy to waste his breath. Don Shinjo has run away, and it's useless to reprimand Kazan and Sakazuki. After a while, I can authorize the three to be admiral. Sengoku secretly decided. If it wasn't for the unexpected incident in the Sabaody archipelago, Borsellino and the others might have already been marine admirals. Now that Don Shinjo suddenly appeared and disappeared, Sakazuki and Kazan's perfect achievements left a stain. Rashly being promoted to admiral will definitely be a problem. Naturally, Sakazuki and Kazan. Okay, you can go back. Sengoku tiredly ordered them to leave. For a moment, he gave people the feeling that he was older by more than 10 years, and they could vaguely see the white hair on his temples. Suddenly, they felt that taking over the position of Marine Fleet Admiral was the biggest mistake in their life. Sakazuki and Kazan did not waste any more words and turned to leave. Angering the fuming marshal was akin to setting fire to himself. Seeing Sakazuki and Kazan leave, Sengoku's face suddenly began to turn gloomy again. In fact, he also believed in the two. Sakazuki and Kazan, as well as Borsellino, were his confidants. Damn bastard, don't let me know who did it in the end if not. With a snort, Sengoku's killing intent soared into the sky. Mariehua. Compared with the depressed Sengoku, Dustless was much more relaxed, basking in the sun leisurely and in a good mood. The plans at hand were carried out perfectly according to his plan. The first was Doflamingo, who became the king of Dressrosa. Although the kid's means were extremely bloody, the effect was good. He easily controlled the wind direction of the whole Dressrosa, completely led public opinion in his direction, and poured all the dirty water on the former King Luke. During this period, several pirates rashly invaded Dressrosa and were annihilated by Doflamingo's overwhelming strength, which encouraged the civilians who had been tortured by pirates for a long time, and Doflamingo's prestige also improved a lot. Those fools are really easy to deceive. Doflamingo just found a few actors and fooled them. After listening to White Zetsu's report, Dustless, who was leisurely basking in the sun, was speechless. The so-called invading pirates were actually actors hired by Doflamingo. However, such a simple trick worked amazingly and successfully eliminated the inner resistance of the residents of Dressrosa. How is the production of the artificial devil fruit going? Dustless asked. All the information about the bloodline factor has been sent to Caesar. The artificial devil fruit is progressing rapidly, and he heard that the finished product has recently come out. White Zetsu was suddenly in a dilemma. His eyebrows squeezed together, but he still gritted his teeth and said, "The finished product has come out, but there are still side effects for the time being. People who eat it will die in a few days." It's no wonder that White Zetsu is in a dilemma. This is far from Dustless's plan for mass production. But even so, the artificial devil fruit has been secretly sold by the black-hearted Doflamingo. Whether they live or die is not something he can control. Die in a few days after eating it? It has such an effect. Hearing this, Dustless raised his eyebrows slightly. In his previous life, he didn't hear that the artificial devil fruit had such side effects. If he didn't know that Caesar was timid and sincerely attached to him, he would really think that this was a trick played by Caesar. Dustless nodded slightly. He also knew that he was too hasty. Scientific experiments can't be sloppy. The smallest mistake can lead to the collapse of the whole process. Enough time is needed to make up for it. Chapter 631. Science and technology need constant demonstration and practice to get results. It is impossible and unrealistic to reach the sky in one step and become a big fat man. What's more, the originator of the bloodline factor is Vegapunk. Caesar is naturally not as good as Vegapunk. The science and technology controlled by the strong are 500 years ahead of the world. This title is not groundless but worthy of it. Hearing that Caesar's artificial devil fruit is temporarily in a state of failure, Dustless suddenly lost interest. By the way, Law shouldn't have been caught by the Marine. Thinking of Law, who was beaten half to death, Dustless asked quietly. White Zetsu shook his head. He was rescued by a big white bear. Thinking of it, White Zetsu's face is still weird and unbelievable. A big white bear that speaks human language and is proficient in physical skills? Anyone would feel strange and subverts human cognition. To some extent, this world is like a biological museum with all kinds of strange life. That useless kid, it's still too early to do the immortal surgery. His half-baked level, it will take at least 10 years of practice to reach the level I expect. Dustless sighed disappointedly. Surgeon fruit is a different kind of devil fruit. Its incredible attack can easily attack Logia without armament haki. It belongs to a special type of attack. It consumes a lot of stamina, overuse, and even consumes its own lifespan. Dustless knows Law's character. In case this kid overconsumes his vitality to play with himself, he will cry without tears. Isn't this a suspicion of raising a tiger? Since surgeon fruit is the ultimate devil fruit, maybe there are other abilities in addition to immortal surgery? I can see that the kid is born with a rebellious bone. When his wings are full, he may take the lead in attacking us. White Zetsu was worried. Raising a tiger? I naturally know this. It's not possible that kid will indeed attack us. Hearing this, Dustless's closed eyes suddenly opened, revealing a cold light, and said blankly, But how likely do you think the pet can hurt its master? No, maybe my idea was wrong before. This ambitious pet wants to attack its master. It must clean up the other dogs of the master in advance. Don't you think so, White Zetsu? Dustless continued to close his eyes leisurely in the sun. What can be done about raising a tiger? The world government's establishment of Shichibukai is also raising a tiger. How to use it depends on how the master drives these wolves and dogs. Baiju nodded vaguely. He was confused by Dustless's words and didn't understand it at all. In any case, if you want to hurt Dustless master, you have to go through Doflamingo. White Zetsu. The meaning behind his words was that he was treating Doflamingo as the evil dog that Dustless spoke of. This is indeed the case. If Law wants to find trouble with Dustless in the future, the first thing he should do is to get rid of Doflamingo. After all, Doflamingo killed Law's most respected Corazon. Unless Dustless takes the initiative to attack, the chance of Law seeing him is 0. Taking a step back, even if Razan could destroy Doflamingo, he would have to face Don Chinjo and Hawkeye, followed by Marine headquarters and the world government, and finally Wu Chen's main body. It is self-evident how difficult it is. Wanting to retaliate against Dustless is actually just a motivation for Law to drive him forward. After all, a dream is a dream and it can't be taken seriously. Humph, what's more, as long as I detect that he has the strength to perform the ageless surgery, I will use genjutsu on him. That kid wants to turn over a new leaf. Dustless sneered. It's okay to retaliate against him, but the key is whether there is a chance. There have been countless people who wanted to retaliate against him, and in the end they all ended up killing themselves. Some people are destined to be someone else's chess piece. Law is such a person. It's just his wishful thinking to turn over a new leaf. The world inside the system. The void always maintained a comfortable blue, and the beautiful golden color was intoxicating. Huey G carried the little girl in her arms and strolled around the courtyard. Her brows were filled with indolent happiness, and she would tease the little girl in her arms from time to time. Her appearance of being so happy that she forgot about home made people feel satisfied. The Jubi's physique was unexpectedly strong, and its recovery ability was extremely abnormal. The day after giving birth, Kagaya was able to get out of bed and walk at will, and she recovered in 2 or 3 days. This scene is rather harmonious. Dustless sighed with emotion, his tone carrying jealousy. Ling, the incarnation of the system consciousness, glanced at Dustless and saw what he was thinking at a glance. She said disdainfully, "You are obviously jealous that little Ueshi can be so close to Kagaya. You are not young anymore. You have lived 3 lives and you are more than 60 years old. You are jealous like a child who has not grown up. Hearing this, Dustless's mouth twitched violently and he smiled embarrassedly. When Ling saw through his thoughts, he couldn't help blushing. As Ling said, he was indeed jealous. That little kid stuck to Kagaya all day long. Dustless wanted to find a suitable opportunity to talk to her. After pregnancy, women will report for charity and gentleness. Such a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity is suitable to talk to her and promote the relationship between the two sides. Maybe he can have a beautiful night with Kagaya, but it's all taken by that little kid. The depression in Dustless's heart can be imagined. Ueshi seemed to be aware of Dustless's depression. Her beautiful eyes narrowed into a crescent shape, cute dimples appeared on her face, and her dark eyes jumped slyly. For fear that Dustless didn't know her existence, she called out to him. Seeing this scene, Dustless's old face couldn't help but turn black. He always felt that this deceptive girl was deliberately doing this. Chapter 632. Dustless was also helpless about this. In Huey's heart, the weight of Yushi and Dustless was a one-sided situation. If he rashly struck up a conversation, even if he didn't want to admit it, there was an 80% chance that he would be humiliating himself, and he might even be mocked by Huey. What a rare guest, what are you doing here? The water surface splashed with faint ripples, and Huey was like a dragonfly skimming the surface of the water, gracefully arriving in front of Dustless. Unlike the past, although her calm voice was still a little cold, it was obviously different from the way she was isolated from the world in the past. Clearly, Huey's temperament had also changed. Why can't I come? No matter what, this is my territory and the ruler is also me. Dustless heard this and asked back, black lines appearing on his forehead. If he remembered correctly, this system world was his from the beginning to the end. Dustless was particularly unhappy with Huey's tone. It was obvious that she wanted to take over the magpie's nest. Yaya, as if noticing that her mother was wronged and treated unfairly, the little girl bared her fangs and brandished her claws at Dustless. Her fierce look made Dustless directly curse. This unfilial child. Fortunately, I can jump and jump now. In the future, when I'm old and can't move, I will definitely not be able to support me. Dustless's words caused Linger and Huey G to roll their eyes and smile at each other. Dustless said so, but he still pecked Yushi's delicate little face, causing the little girl to be dissatisfied and use her white little hand to wipe her face. Seeing this scene, Dustless's lungs rolled, and he almost spat out a mouthful of old blood uncontrollably. I can temporarily use divine might to absorb you into another space and then leave this world together. Dustless looked at Huey with a serious face, looking for an answer. Hearing this, Huey shook her head resolutely. Let's talk about it when Yushi grows up. I feel that my life is much more fulfilling than before. Saying that, Huey also pecked Yushi's face. Dustless's treatment was obviously different from hers. Little Yushi leaned closer to Huey. The corner of his mouth twitched. Dustless no longer hesitated and chose to respect Huey's decision. Little Ueshi's shining eyes were filled with longing. She couldn't wait to grow wings and go out to see the outside world, but she was ignored by Dustless and Huey. As for the other girls, Dustless also went to take a look and got the same answer. They were not very interested in the outside world. They were not the kind of people who liked to join in the fun. It was not a bad thing to gather together and talk about the memories of their youth. Dustless was anxious because he had already used various means to delay the lifespan of these confidants, but he could still vaguely see the fine wrinkles at the corners of their eyes. This meant that their lifespan was declining. Immortality, these 4 words sounded easy, but it was hard to do. Until now, Dustless also knew Law's ability, and the light fruit in his space had the ability to increase lifespan. The whole world was full of heroes, guided by the words of the pirate king Roger before his death. The number of pirates all over the world soared, and they were all yearning for the legendary treasure. The overall strength of the pirates is above the marine, but they are just scheming and killing each other, so they are not a problem. Even so, the overall strength of the marine is not much stronger. It seems that you only said this, Sengoku? Dustless asked while holding the Den Den mushi. The person on the other side is Fleet Admiral Sengoku of the Marine Headquarters. The purpose is also very simple. Dustless's strength is obvious to all, and he hopes to use his strength to train the Marine recruits. What a joke! Dustless's own subordinates have never trained. How can he be bored enough to help Sengoku train the recruits? There is a retired Z that can do it. Could it be that this group of guys and Z had some irreconcilable conflict? Dustless secretly guessed. Z is a tragic character. He was loyal to the Marine all his life, but in the end he died in the hands of the Marine. According to Dustless's guess, Z has already given up on the Marine, so even if he doesn't help the Marine train the recruits, it is understandable. With all due respect, your justice is too childish. I can't agree. Dustless refused. The reason why he is the so-called honorary admiral to some extent is more like a disguised transaction. If there is no benefit, Dustless will not accept this hard work. Sengoku's face turned black and he cursed in his heart. If you don't want to help, then don't help, but insult our name of justice. Sengoku's heart is actually very bitter. The Marine has done countless shady things in the dark, and it is really not that righteous. Justice is just hanging on the mouth to fool the world. The people who really put justice in their heart are rare, such as Sakazuki is more like a butcher in the name of justice. It is not an exaggeration to say that the Marine's justice is a child's play. After some small talk, Sengoku closed the den mushi. Talking nonsense with Dustless will only make him more confused, and even his thinking will not be normal. Asking Dustless to train the Marine, the reason why Sengoku had no choice but to use this opportunity to catch Don Chinjo alive to promote Sakazuki and others to admiral, who would have thought that the old guy ran away halfway. In order to block the mouths of the people, Sengoku had to put this matter aside. Sengoku, this guy must have some conflict with Z. Dustless said with certainty. The Marine's current philosophy is contrary to Z's justice. Z who can't see the hope of the future is discouraged, and anything is possible. The Marine is just the surface of the world government, and in fact they have been playing the role of a clown. Sometimes, the Marine is more like the scapegoat of the world government, and their profession is to take the blame for the Gorosei. Letting Dustless play with them, Sengoku actually thought of it. Dustless frowned. The life and death of the Marine is none of his business, he can just watch. Chapter 633. Sengoku's heart was extremely gloomy, and his face was as ugly as if he had eaten a rat. If he could, he really wanted to fight with Dustless to vent his anger. However, Dustless was in Mariehua and he was a Tenryubito, and his strength was not weaker than him. A Marine admiral offended him, and Fleet Admiral Sengoku couldn't get angry easily. The gloom in his heart could be imagined. Ah, you must have been defeated by Royce South again. Garp laughed unscrupulously as he walked into the office. At the same time he quickly stuffed the shell into his mouth, which was quite cute, but Garp's eyes flashed with a cold light from time to time. Obviously, there was a deviation between the surface and what he thought. Sengoku looked at Garp with interest. He knew that the old guy was a rough and delicate person. He was actually very smart, and there were some places where he was far behind. Do you have any good ideas? Sengoku asked expectantly. Hearing this, Garp just rolled his eyes and stuffed a lot of shells into his mouth in one breath. A smile appeared on his rough face as he shook his head and said, "It's not a good idea, but fart, there is one." Puff. The air in the Fleet Admiral's office, which was still comfortable, suddenly became as smelly as a toilet. Sengoku's old face changed greatly, and he quickly opened the window for ventilation. Turning his head, he stared at Garp angrily, and his old face turned green. This old guy was getting more and more disrespectful to him as a Marine Fleet Admiral. Today it was fart, maybe it will be even worse in the future. By the way, our Marine's justice is sometimes too childish. Garp suddenly said seriously. Sengoku's expression suddenly froze and he wanted to refute, but he was speechless, because he understood that this was a fact, and the current situation of the Marine explained everything. On the surface, it seemed that they were united, but in fact they were also ganging up on each other. First of all, Admiral Z was discouraged by the Marine. Even if Z didn't say it, the shrewd Sengoku could see it. Secondly, the future three admirals expressed their own opinions, and they were also divided. Sakazuki and Kazan had serious conflicts in some areas. Although he was biased towards Kazan's justice, he couldn't show it. As for the slick Borisari, he had been directly ignored by Sengoku. He was the most unreliable one. Well, so what? Justice will not lose to evil pirates, Sengoku said stubbornly. Although the Marine's justice is indeed not worth a few cents, but there is a saying that if you win the hearts of the people, you will win the world. The civilians of the whole world at least still support the Marine, which is also the foundation of the Marine's long-term success. Sengoku, the reason why you spent so much effort to study the humanoid weapon is also a sign of guilt. Garp stared at Sengoku's face and said straightforwardly. Perhaps it was because he was worried about the future of the Navy that he developed this killing weapon that would only obey orders. Those who do great things don't care about trifles. With a snort, Sengoku said without blushing. Dustless shook his head when he heard this. He could understand Sengoku. This may be one of the reasons why Dustless thinks that the Marine's justice is a joke. On the one hand, he talks about holy justice every day, but behind his back, there are countless crazy experiments, as well as inhumane cold orders, treating human life as grass. The two completely contradicted each other. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that it was child's play. East Blue Fengche Town. Since the last time Dustless left, the whole island has returned to tranquility, but there are still bandits roaming around. As for what they do, it's also their normal work. Luffy didn't know anything about the last incident, which was also thanks to Dustless. Ace and Sabo didn't tell him because they were afraid of leaving a shadow in his heart. In the lively tavern, the Akagami, red hair, pirates drank beer and laughed. They had forgotten the pain of the past and found new companions during this period. Soon, Akagami, red hair, will choose to return to the new world. This time, the tavern is equivalent to a farewell drink for everyone. During this period, the rubber fruit that Shanks brought to the new world was also eaten by Luffy by mistake and became a landlubber who couldn't swim. Shanks could only smile bitterly. "This is the last time we meet, Luffy?" Rubbing Luffy's hair, Shanks smiled generously. Luffy nodded disappointedly, his eyes were full of reluctance. Then he raised his fist and shouted, "I will also become a world-famous pirate in the future." It was still a short time, but Shanks' brainwashing and talking skills were done well. Luffy was fooled and full of yearning for the magnificent sea. "That's the best, I'm really looking forward to meeting you in the new world in the future." Shanks was pleased to see this. "In the future I'll go? You don't need to go. Pirates value teamwork. All of you stay here. Isn't it a teamwork to be buried with me?" Luffy's immature voice suddenly deepened, like the whisper of a devil, filling the ears of red-haired Shanks. Immediately, his pupils changed strangely, flashing with a demonic bloody light. Luffy's whole body floated with a faint bloody light, and it was extremely gloomy. Because it was too evil, the entire tavern fainted in an instant. The only ones who could remain conscious were Red Hair Shanks and his crew. "What? Haven't you recognized your old friend?" "It's really disappointing. In order to meet an old friend who hasn't seen me for a long time, I deliberately used the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, hoping to maintain this state for a while, but you forgot who I am." Luffy's eyes turned into Scarlet Sharingan, which was extremely strange, and the corners of his mouth were raised. With the flashing red light, he was no different from a demon coming out of hell to take people's lives. The transcription seal, that Dustless hid in Luffy's eye sockets, was finally activated. It's just that Luffy doesn't have Sharingan, and only God knows how long it can last, but for Dustless, it's enough time. Chapter 634. Red Hair Shanks's face changed greatly. This voice seemed to be full of indifference to all life. He could not forget it at all times and had always remembered it in his heart. The former crew members of the Akagami, Red Hair, pirates were all killed by the owner of this voice. "It seems that you finally remember me, Shanks." Luffy laughed casually. His words were filled with frivolity. Combined with his frivolous action of scratching his head, it was completely different from the usual Luffy. Especially those red eyes that were emitting a red light that could devour people, they were filled with an indescribable pressure. These strange eyes are the nightmare of the entire crew of the Akagami, Red Hair, pirates, and they will never let it go. It has already left an indelible mark in their hearts. There is no doubt that at this moment, Dustless's consciousness replaced Luffy's. The Akagami, Red Hair, pirates who had interacted with Dustless were nervous and looked at the 7 or 8-year-old Luffy. The atmosphere was extremely oppressive for a moment, and the air froze in an instant, and there was even a suffocating danger. "Who are you?" Coincidentally, at this moment, a puzzled voice suddenly resounded. The man with a long gun suddenly took a few steps forward and was close to Luffy, looking at the flashing red eyes with interest and fear in his heart. "Get out of here, bastard. Trash like you is even worse than those notorious pirates." Raising his eyelids, Dustless's voice was as cold as frost. "For people like Jesuit, Dustless hates them the most." "What did you say?" "Apologize to me immediately." Hearing this, Jesuit's face changed greatly, and the muzzle was almost instantly aimed at Luffy, staring at him angrily. No one can be relieved when they are called trash and bastard. If Luffy was not a child, he would have shot him immediately. "Stop, Jesuit." He is no longer Luffy, and Luffy's consciousness has been replaced by someone else. Red Hair Shanks said hoarsely. The Western sword was already in his hand, and he was on guard against Dustless's every move. Jezeb was taken aback when he heard that. Just as he was about to retract his gun, Luffy's tender body leaped up in a strange manner. His movements were smooth and fluid, and his powerful little foot kicked mercilessly at Jezeb's face. Bang! Jesus Boo, who was caught off guard, was sent flying and crashed into a big tree. Trash like you is worse than scum. Staying here will only pollute the air. Dustless's crimson eyes were filled with disgust. His tone was mechanical and emotionless. Dustless hated selfish people like Jezeb the most. For his so-called dream, he abandoned his wife and children to become a pirate. Even when his wife died, he didn't look back. Dustless could not sacrifice his own family members to realize his dreams. Even if he was cold-blooded, he could not do it. His confidants were existences that he would risk his life to protect, let alone abandon them. Therefore, Dustless wanted to kill Jesus Boo the moment he laid eyes on him. If it weren't for the insufficient chakra in the transcription seal, he would have definitely torn this heartless bastard into pieces. You're courting death. Jezeb's eyes flashed with murderous intent, and then he rushed over, his fist covered with armament hockey, and it seemed that he wanted to teach Luffy a lesson. Akagami, red hair, pirates are first-class masters. Jezeb can cover bullets with armament hockey, and his limbs can naturally use armament hockey. Come back, Jezeb, this guy is the culprit who forced the Akagami, red hair, pirates into a desperate situation. Vice Captain Ben Beckman suddenly screamed, his tone was full of eagerness, but it was too late. Dustless's crimson eyes twisted, and he spat out cold mist. Trash that is worse than scum. You will be cut to pieces in the dream world. As soon as Dustless's voice fell, Jesus Boo's rapidly approaching body suddenly stopped. His eyes were empty and dazed, like a zombie that had lost its soul, turning into a walking corpse. He then fell to the ground, unable to bear it any longer. Dustless easily dealt with him using illusions. Seeing this scene, the Akagami, red hair, pirates raised their swords. Era. I'm now occupying this little devil's body, are you sure you want to do it? Dustless looked at the furious red hair Shanks and chuckled. This is just the chakra in Luffy's body, and Luffy will bear the injury himself, so he expects that red hair Shanks will not do it. You, who the hell are you? Jezeb, who fell to the ground, gritted his teeth and asked. His whole body trembled unnaturally, twitching unconsciously, and his forehead was covered with cold sweat as if he had suffered a lot. His face was as fierce as a ghost, pale as snow, and powerless. The members of the Akagami, red hair, pirates quickly helped Jezeb. Oh, I prefer to call him the evilest man in the world, or the most despicable man in the world. Red hair Shanks roared in a low voice, wanting to tear Dustless into pieces. If he lost in an open fight, he lost because his skills were not as good as others. Red hair Shanks had nothing to say, but Dustless always used this kind of despicable means. The enemy was close at hand, but red hair Shanks couldn't do anything, and his lungs were about to explode. Oh, I like to see you want to turn my bones to ashes, but you can't do anything about it. Aren't you the Yonko for emperors of the New World? If you don't like it, come and hit me. Dustless said sarcastically. The appearance of a villain made red hair Shanks go berserk on the spot, and the sword in his hand suddenly raised high. After seeing Luffy's face, he reluctantly retracted the sword. You guys are really ugly. You want to be a bitch but still want to have a monument? Dustless said lightly with a tone of disdain. It is undeniable that pirates do pursue freedom and like to take risks. But this is based on the pain of others. Red hair Shanks is actually a bloodthirsty butcher, and the position of a Yonko for emperors was stepped on the bodies of other pirates. This newly joined Jezeb is no exception. He abandoned his wife and children, and when his wife was dying he didn't look back. Now he has to pretend to be righteous. Chapter 635. The world's most evil person, the world's most despicable and shameless person? Hearing this, Dustless couldn't help but smile. Controlling Luffy's body, he couldn't help but shake his head. He didn't know when he started to have a messy reputation. Maybe he really is the world's most evil person, but so what? The winner is praised and the loser is despised. Especially in this troubled world where pirates are rampant, being despicable and shameless is also another way to make a living. As long as you can survive, being despicable and shameless is a kind of wisdom. It's because I'm despicable and shameless that I can jump until now and often disgusted you. It's because you pirates like to be a bitch and set up a monument, like to play with justice and dreams, that's why you're hated by everyone. Dustless laughed. Good people don't live long, evil people live forever. This is the truth summed up by the ancient sages. If you can live with the person you like even if you are the most evil person, so what? Hearing this, red hair Shanks' old face twitched, but he was speechless because Dustless was telling the truth. He was despicable enough, so he always laughed at the red hair pirates from the perspective of the winner. Dustless's method of controlling Luffy is despicable enough. There is no doubt that he is the final winner. Thinking of this, red hair Shank's old face turned green. The heavens are watching what man does. There are gods 3 feet above our heads. Good and evil will be decided by the heavens. With red eyes, the red-haired Shanks clenched his fists and said hatefully through gritted teeth, "It's ridiculous self-deception again, Shanks. Sometimes I really think you are a naive kid. Now in this world, I cover the sky with one hand, I deceive God's eyes, the so-called God's ears are covered, good and evil are decided by me." Hearing this, Dustless suddenly retorted, then pointed to the void and chuckled, "Don't you think it's ridiculous? No, you can ask God and see if he agrees with you." Dustless sneered. He could clearly see red hair Shanks complaining about his fate. Perhaps the current Dustless was sent by God to make things difficult for him. Thus he felt that the world was unfair. In reality, the heavenly Tao was fair, but Dustless cheated and cheated. Ridiculous. Dustless couldn't help but shake his head as he looked at the expressions of the Akagami, red hair, pirates. He could clearly see the fear and resentment in these people's eyes. They wished they could beat him up, but there was nothing they could do. Even if they killed Luffy, they wouldn't be able to shake Dustless. "What is your purpose? Don't get carried away." With a cold glint in his eyes, the red-haired Shanks warned kindly. Dustless just waved his hand carelessly. So what if the villain was intoxicated with success? If he could keep looking at the red-haired Shanks being humiliated, Wuxia didn't mind showing off all the time. It's also an honor to be able to anger a Yonko, 4 emperors, standing at the top of the pyramid. It's not too much to joke with an old friend. We have fought several times and we are old friends. It's just that every time I beat you up. I'm sorry, next time I will be merciful. At least I will leave you some self-esteem so that you won't be as miserable as you are now. Dustless nodded. Kill this bastard. The crew of the Akagami, red hair, pirates finally couldn't stand Dustless's sarcasm and stood up to propose to kill him directly. The implication was to kill Luffy together. After all, Dustless is now occupying his body. Just by you? Unless I completely exhaust chakra, no other method will work. If you don't believe me, just try it. Wuxia controlled Luffy's tender body to look at this group of people. His every movement contained an unprecedented calmness. Don't worry, Luffy. Don't worry. How can a normal human be angry with a clown for fun? Red hair Shanks's eyes flickered and sometimes shot a light that was enough to devour everything. He stared at Luffy and seemed to hesitate whether to kill him or not. The Navy meets the Sea Thieves, justice meets evil. 2 diametrically opposed forces come into contact with each other. What do you think will happen other than a war? Wuxia asked with a smile. Red hair Shanks's tight face showed a sneer. Although the crew today is not as good as before, they are all elites. Armament hockey and observation hockey are all elites. It is tantamount to a dream to suddenly attack and kill them. The war I'm talking about is not the kind where you fight back and forth, it's just unilateral annihilation. Dustless's smiling face solidified. His voice suddenly became low, full of cold chill, and the eyes in his eyes were spinning wildly. Bursts of evil red light came out, and Luffy's whole body was covered with a bloody halo. Everyone pay attention, this guy. Seeing his eyes spinning strangely, red hair Shanks quickly shouted, knowing that Dustless was going to attack, but it was too late. Tsukuyami. The red hair pirates who saw Dustless's eyes were almost instantly wiped out and fell to the ground powerlessly. Their faces were as pale as paper, and their expressions were faintly filled with horror and boundless fear. As expected of Yonko, 4 emperors, red hair Shanks, he still has consciousness. Dustless's calm voice splashed with ripples and he was quite surprised. Ravaged by Tsukuyami, red hair Shanks just fell to the ground and then slowly stood up. Obviously his willpower was abnormally strong. At the same time, Dustless's voice also lowered. This blow almost used up all the chakra he hid in Luffy's eyes. You are also a lamp that has run out of oil. Red hair Shanks said with a tone of relief. However, Dustless smiled strangely. He had considered all the unfavorable factors before. It was indeed impossible to directly kill all the members of Red Hair Pirates with Tsukuyami. Boom. 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 At this moment, messy footsteps and shouts suddenly came from outside the tavern. The final protagonist has finally appeared. Chapter 636. Noticing the messy footsteps outside the tavern, red-haired Shanks's face changed drastically. Normally he wouldn't care about some small fries, but now things are different. Attacked by dustless Tsukuyami, he was like a swaying willow branch in the wind and rain. He could only go with the flow without any resistance. He was extremely weak. Red-haired Shanks, who used to be majestic, was now at the mercy of others. Even if it was a child with a sword, there was a chance that his life would be taken. Don't think that everyone is as dark as you. Maybe that group of people is just passing by. Passing by? I'm afraid you can't even fool yourself with this kind of deceit. Shaking his head, Dustless immediately interrupted Shanks with a disdainful tone. At this time, he was still imagining the development of the situation in his own direction. I can tell you that the group of people who are causing trouble outside, not only have you seen them, but you seem to be very familiar with them. Dustless's tone suddenly became a little more playful and obviously gloating. You have shown your power to those guys before. Last time when they robbed Windcar Town, it was you who helped them out. They are a group of bandits, and their leader seems to be called Sieg. Hearing this, red-haired Shank's face suddenly became gloomy and murderous. Sieg? He naturally has an impression of him. When he stayed in Windcar Town for a while, Sieg came to Windcar Town to rob, but he was beaten up by the red-haired pirates and all the bandits were annihilated except for Sieg himself. Of course, Sieg deliberately let him go. Red-haired Shank's idea at the time was very simple. He was just a small character and there was no need to kill him. Besides, he was not that kind of person. He didn't expect that the one who came to cause trouble today was that kid. An unprecedented sense of regret quietly spread in his heart. If he could have killed Sieg directly, there wouldn't be such a scene now. Did you plan all this in advance? You despicable guy. Red-haired Shanks roared with all his strength as his eyes locked on Dustless. It seemed that this was the only way he could vent his suppressed emotions and calm himself down so that he could find a good strategy to defeat the enemy. Since you said that I am the evilest person in the world, so what if I'm despicable and shameless? The winner is still me. The Yonko, 4 emperors, may be killed by a bandit with a bounty of 8 million berries. This news must be very exciting. Dustless chuckled indifferently. Sizing up the red-haired Shanks, Dustless' interest was piqued. He smiled and said, actually, it's not like there's no way to survive. Lower your self-esteem and become, in your dreams. As if he had expected what Dustless was going to say, Shank immediately refuted him. Pirates are a group of people who advocate freedom. Asking him to be Dustless's subordinate is tantamount to a fool's dream. What's more, the lives of the Japanese crew of the Akagami pirates were all given by Dustless. He only has pure hatred. It's impossible for him to be Dustless's subordinate. There's a road to heaven but you don't want to take it. There's no door to hell but you want to jump into it. Anyway, it's up to you. Dustless said calmly. He had already guessed that red-haired Shanks would mercilessly refuse. The latter likes to live an unrestrained life, but Dustless wants to lock him in a cage and live alone. This is obviously impossible. Then again, do you think a group of bandits can kill us? Red-haired Shanks clenched his teeth and insisted. His shining eyes were full of stubbornness, and haki was faintly oozing out of his body. The whole tavern shook as if there was a sudden earthquake. Kakaka, countless cracks appeared on the wooden house as messy as a spiderweb. This exquisite haki can't be underestimated. No wonder this kid can become one of the Yonko, 4 emperors, at such a young age. Dustless slightly nodded as he saw the scene in front of him and remembered it in his heart. Looking at the whole world, red-haired Shanks is the only person who can use Haushiku haki to make substantial attacks. This is something that even Whitebeard who fought with Dustless can't do. As for Garp, he may be able to do it, but Dustless hasn't seen it before. At least in his knowledge, the only person who can do this is red-haired Shanks. I thought my haki was a small achievement, but compared with this bastard, it seems that I'm still far behind. Dustless sighed with disappointment. In the final analysis, he is also a human being. Everything needs to be done step by step. Although haki's training is very fast, it's still a far cry from red-haired Shanks. Boom boom boom, the tavern finally couldn't withstand red-haired Shanks' haki and burst in an instant. The pillars supporting the roof have collapsed and the cracks around them are getting bigger and bigger. The sunlight from the outside has shone inside the tavern. Is it possible that this guy, a dog, will jump over a wall? This sentence is appropriate for red-haired Shanks. He can also jump over a wall. Dustless instantly understood the intentions of red-haired Shanks. He intends to use Haushiku haki to directly collapse the entire tavern and bury the entire Akagami, red-haired pirates, in it. In this way it will be possible to escape this disaster. The bandits are just looking for money. Naturally, it's impossible for them to reorganize the collapsed tavern, and maybe the nearby Marines will arrive at any time and loot the entire village in a short time and then slip away. But you're really vicious. The crew of the Akagami red-haired pirates is a strong man. Naturally, they won't be killed by the collapsed piles. As a rubber man, Luffy won't have an accident, but the ordinary people in the tavern will inevitably become funerary objects. They are all mortals. A mad dog-driven mad is scary enough. But I suddenly feel that a mad red-haired Shanks is even scarier, because he's capable of doing anything. Chapter 637. In a trance, Red-Hair Shanks seemed to see Dustless's disappointment after his plot failed. Red-Hair Shanks smiled triumphantly. It was a great comfort for him to be able to turn the tables. Always being suppressed and beaten violently, even an Iron Man will leave a psychological shadow. I should have told you before, don't have any naive thoughts. Look at you now. Dustless shook his head and sighed hopelessly. Red-haired Shanks had apparently entered into his wild imagination again. After many years of scheming, Dustless has become accustomed to accidents. You're on your own. Glancing at the red-haired Shanks, the chakra left by Dustless in Luffy's body was completely consumed. Luffy also lost consciousness and fell to the ground, falling into a coma. Boom! The entire tavern collapsed in an instant and turned into a pile of ruins, burying Akagami red-hair pirates in it. As for the ordinary civilians, they were smashed into flesh and blood in an instant. People are selfish. Since Akagami red-hair wants him and his companions to live, he can only do this. As for those innocent people who were implicated, at most, he will kill Dustless in the future to avenge them. Give me an inch and I'll take a mile. Mariehua's Dustless body sneered again and again. He likes to clean up people who think they can't do anything. God treats everyone fairly, and Red-Hair Shanks has no protagonist aura to break out. On the contrary, Dustless's flames are enough to cover and burn the whole world, and the first unlucky one is Mariehua. To be exact, White Zetsu and Hancock are now under the same roof as Dustless. Both of them trembled in fear and didn't dare to look up. White Zetsu, who knows Dustless's nature, knows that he won't kill his own people. On the other hand, Hancock's pretty face is pale and full of fear. It's no wonder that it's the first time she has seen Dustless's murderous look, and it's normal for her to be afraid. Your doppelganger is still in Windmill Town, right? Even if you can't get rid of Red-Hair's group, you can at least make them suffer, Dustless said as he stared coldly at White Zetsu. White Zetsu immediately nodded when he heard that, indicating that there was no problem. Red-Hair Shanks at his peak was definitely not a match for him even if there were 100 of him stacked together. However, Red-Hair had already been tricked by Dustless's Tsukuyomi, making it much easier to deal with him. Idiot, of all people to offend, you just had to offend Lord Dustless. In his heart he couldn't help but curse Red-Hair for being brainless. After so many lessons, that kid didn't seem to have grown any wisdom. This was the result of fighting Dustless. If White Zetsu was Red-Hair, he would definitely hide in the mountains. Dreams had to be realized with a life. After a moment of silence, Dustless gave a few more instructions. Then Baiju left. Master, Sister Odoheim just came back. She seems to be very tired and is now resting. Seeing White Zetsu leave, Hancock said softly. Dustless nodded slightly and a bright light flashed in his eyes. Odoheim came back, indicating that the task given to her was a fruitful one. Then his face was a little guilty. Thinking of his rudeness to Princess Odoheim in the past, Dustless's face was apologetic. He was cold, but he would treat those who sincerely supported him sincerely. He was indeed a little ruthless to Odoheim in the past. In the dead of night, the lights of the entire Mariehua gradually went out. In the dark corridor, Dustless walked. He was used to the darkness and there was no difference between night and half a day. After several turns, he came to the room where Odoheim slept peacefully. Looking as far as he could, his line of sight passed through the red silk curtain. Odoheim fell asleep and was about to step in. Dustless's eyes flashed with hesitation. Thinking of Odoheim's fatigue, he turned and left. Coming here late at night without saying anything, you shouldn't be bored enough to spy on me sleeping. A light voice with a little complaint sounded in his ears. Dustless was stunned and then turned around. His face was very unnatural. To be honest, he didn't have any extra thoughts. He just wanted to see how Odoheim was doing recently. I don't have a heart of stone as you think. Dustless wondered. Odoheim smiled when she heard this. She knew that Dustless was telling the truth. Although he was barbaric and rude to her before, Dustless is indeed gentler than before. Then again, Whitebeard, that ambitious guy, may really have a possessive desire for the ancient weapon, Sea King. Since the last battle with Bigu's mom, the number of Whitebeard pirates in Fishman Island has increased a lot. Princess Otoheim said cautiously. After tidying up her clothes, Princess Aji's watery eyes couldn't help but darken. She didn't mind that her perfect curves were completely exposed. Everything about her was occupied by Wu Qin for his own use. Covering up would only increase the ridicule. Of course. Otherwise, why do you think Whitebeard is protecting the Fishman Island and showing mercy? Wu Qin said calmly, as if this was how it should be. In fact, Whitebeard and Dustless have the same purpose. They are both going for the ancient weapon. The source of the news is naturally One Piece and his best friend Roger. It's all your fault. I heard Hancock say that you used the dark fruit to plot against Bigu's mom and Whitebeard and provoked a war between them. Whitebeard, who realized his shortcomings, had other ideas. At this point, Otoheim's resentment was more than enough. At the same time, her view of Whitebeard was also very different. She was grateful to him for sheltering Fishman Island, but she didn't expect his real purpose to be the ancient weapon. Although it was Wu Qin who forced Whitebeard into a desperate situation, it also showed that a tiger on the verge of desperation could do any crazy thing. You should thank me for letting you see the essence of Whitebeard. Otherwise, your Fishman Island would still be in the dark. Dustless laughed and peeked at Otoheim, showing an expression that you should thank me. Otoheim stared at Dustless and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This guy is really shameless, but she has to admit that this is a fact. She gave a big white eye to Dustless and then pulled him into the room. Chapter 638. Every minute of the spring night was worth 1,000 gold, and the beautiful scenery was naturally not worth mentioning. When Dustless and Otoheim got up, it was already late in the morning. Under Hancock's care, Dustless lazily got up from the bed. Everything was handed over to his subordinates, and he was unusually free. Sometimes he strolled around the slave auction house, or went back to the system world to tease little Moonshi. Although life was boring and monotonous, it was also full of other kinds of fun. In short, although life was different from what he imagined, Dustless did not feel bored. By the way, why did you push me to the position of the king of the Fishman Island? When eating, Otoheim asked puzzledly. A while ago, Dustless secretly sent her back to the Fishman Island, in fact, to inherit the position of king of the Fishman Island. As for King Neptune, Dustless had already reconciled him with other means. The one who killed him was the power of Dustless in Shirahoshi's body. Although it was not strong, it was more than enough to kill Neptune. After learning the news, Otoheim almost collapsed in despair. Persuasion was useless, so she had to use her eyes to temporarily seal her painful memory. Time was the best elixir. Over time it would gradually fade. As for Neptune's death, Wu Qin could only apologize. A man of great ambition would not care about trifles. Some people who shouldn't exist, even if they were innocent, must be eliminated. The Fishman Island is the only way to enter the New World. Otherwise, you will have to cross the Yellow Earth to enter the second half of the New World. The geographical location is extremely important, and there are ancient weapons and the existence of the Poneglyph. I need a reliable person to sit there as the king. Dustless said bluntly. The reason why he erased Neptune was that this old guy was flirting with Whitebeard all day long. Just in case, Dustless directly killed him. If his position was unknown, he was an enemy, and the enemy naturally could only be killed. Although he felt sorry for Otoheim, Dustless still killed him. Since he had already cuckolded Neptune, it was a relief to send him to heaven. Princess Aji nodded. She was confident in the position of Fishman Island's king. With Dustless as her backer, she could build her own ideal kingdom. Why was the Fishman Island bullied in the past? Because his background wasn't strong enough. Why wasn't his background strong enough? Because the Fishman Island has no value, even the value of being used has no value. Now Otoheim naturally cannot let go of Dustless, this big ship. Seize the right time, the Fishman Island can restore the past glory. At this moment, a different scene was playing out in Windmill Town. This damn bastard, he can actually take a beating. White Zoo's mouth twitched. At that moment, red-haired Shanks, who was facing him, was already covered in blood. He had been severely injured by Dustless's Tsukuyami. He was dispirited and had less than 10% of his combat strength left. But even so, Sieg and the bandits he led were still defeated by red-haired Shanks. Just in case, red-haired Shanks destroyed them this time. Of course, there were also countless white Zetsu underground. You're really a monster. Your willpower is really strong. Even after being hit by that kind of technique, you can still fight with such vigor. You're unimaginably strong, White Zetsu said gloomily while holding a broadsword. Red-haired Shanks was unreasonably strong. Compared to when he left the New World, he had obviously become much stronger. But you still have to die. White Zetsu's eyes shot out a murderous aura as he rushed forward. He had countless clones almost all over the world. Only his main body didn't die. It didn't matter how many of these clones died. After all, they could devour corpses to restore their numbers. You're courting death, Pucci. Red-haired Shanks's face was filled with murderous intent. The western sword in his hand slashed down, instantly cutting White Zetsu in half. These white monsters look exactly the same, and there are so many of them. Are they clones? Narrowing his eyes, red-haired Shanks said in surprise. Pucci. The western sword in his hand stabbed his arm without hesitation. Intense pain immediately spread throughout his body. Red-haired Shanks's unconscious mind suddenly became alert. Strong willpower? Maybe, but the pain caused by self-harm kept Shanks awake. Otherwise, he would have been devoured by the White Zetsu army. This was only temporary, and red-haired Shanks couldn't use his full strength. As time passed, the disadvantage became more and more obvious. It wasn't until the evening that the farce ended. With a Pucci sound, red-haired Shanks killed the last White Zetsu. The corpses had piled up into a mountain. He was also full of holes and his left arm was missing. Before the group fight, it was cut down by White Zetsu. Even so, red-haired Shanks persisted. After knowing what happened, Dustless couldn't help but respect him. If possible, Dustless still wanted to take this kind of tough guy for his own use. Once this kind of person was tamed, he would be as loyal as an eagle and would never betray him. However, the two sides had already formed an irreconcilable grudge, so he could only use absolute power to destroy him. Time flew by, spring came and went. When he realized it had already been 5 years. Mariajoa. The bright and beautiful sun was descending from the 9th heaven. Wuchen was leisurely lying on the couch and enjoying the sun bath. On his abdomen, there was a little girl who looked like she was carved from jade. Her black eyes were like black agate. Touching the little girl's silver hair, Dustless's face was full of helplessness. He then sighed. For this scene he was obviously used to it. Yushi, come down. Do you want to crush father? Yushi just made a face at Dustless, then jumped 3 feet high and landed heavily on Dustless's abdomen. Wu Qin hurriedly caught her. This mischievous brat knew how to torment people more than anyone else. The reason why he brought her out of the system world was that this little brat had been pestering Huiji every day. Huiji, who loved her dearly, couldn't bear to reject her. Yushi was her flesh and blood, so she naturally didn't want her daughter to be wronged. Since Kagaya had spoken, Dustless naturally brought Yushi to see the outside world. Chapter 639. Wuchen didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he looked at the naughty girl in his arms. This little mischievous child was extremely shrewd and cunning. There was a world of difference between her IQ and her immature body. Then, he helplessly carried her to the depths of the room. The drinks that Hancock had already prepared were clearly visible and neatly placed on the exquisite stone table. That old man really knows how to enjoy life. He is living a carefree life outside and still has a beautiful little maid. Yushi's little mouth was constantly stuffed with pastries. From time to time, she glanced at Hancock's curves and secretly nodded. Her eyes then became dull and empty. She seemed to be comparing Hancock's figure with Kagaya's and winked at Dustless. Stop talking nonsense and eat your food. Dustless scolded with a black face. He was speechless. He really couldn't figure out what Kagaya taught this little girl. But looking at her eyes, it was obvious that she was self-taught. He picked up the newspaper sent by Hancock and read it carefully, looking for the information he needed. If he guessed correctly, the 3 lieutenant generals should set foot on the summit in a few days. Seeing that Dustless didn't answer, little Yushi took advantage of the situation. Obviously, she didn't want to let Dustless go so easily. No wonder the auntie said that you are a monk who doesn't get close to women. I am the only one, it's the body. The words that were about to come out of her mouth stopped abruptly. Yushi's neck unconsciously shrank. Dustless's eyes were gloomy as he stared at her sternly. My body is normal. Yushi quickly changed her words. She begged Kagaya for several months before she was able to come out. She didn't want to be locked in the little black room by Dustless again. Helplessly glancing at her, Wu Qin withdrew his line of sight. This eccentric little girl was very strange. Sometimes he had to teach her a lesson. Otherwise she might really take advantage of him. Rumble? The den mushi on the table suddenly rang. Dustless looked at Hancock, who nodded and took the den mushi. You really know how to enjoy life. Little Yushi rolled her eyes, but was simply ignored by Dustless. Living with Kagaya all year round, she is full of strangers to the outside world. The decadent life of the celestial dragons is beyond the imagination of the world. The resources of the whole world are at their disposal. In fact, compared to other celestial dragons, Dustless was already a monk who had seen through the world of mortals. Long time no see, Sengoku. A magnetic voice came out of Dustless's mouth. He said softly, "You don't come to the Three Treasures Palace for no reason. You must be up to no good by coming to find me." Marshal Sengoku on the other end of the phone was stunned. After thinking about it carefully, he was embarrassed. It was not a good thing for him to look for Dustless. Every time he looked for Dustless, he would find all kinds of hard work for Dustless. Ahem. There are exceptions to everything. Sengoku's face was red and he was gloomy. Before it started, in this short confrontation he seemed to have fallen into a disadvantage. He couldn't help but feel emotional. Every time they had contact in the past, Sengoku seemed to be at a disadvantage. "Do you want me to participate in the promotion ceremony of Kazan and Sakazuki?" In an instant he understood Sengoku's intention. Dustless's voice came into Sengoku's ears. "Yes, at present I am the only admiral in the marine. It is indeed unreasonable not to participate." Sengoku breathed a sigh of relief when he heard this, and his tight heart also relaxed. He was about to open his mouth to praise Wu Qin, but suddenly he became sensible and sent him to the 18th floor of hell. "Even so, I still don't have time. You should know that my naughty daughter needs me to look after her." Dustless refused. Sengoku couldn't refute it. Hearing this, Sengoku's old face turned green in an instant. He was anxious for a while. As a marshal, he had never been smooth when he looked for Wu Qin, a general. Every time it was bumpy. Fortunately, he had already made preparations for this. He had long been prepared to coax and pester. After several years of getting along, Sengoku has figured out Dustless's temperament. This kind of person hates threats and coercion the most. If he does what he wants, he can turn the impossible into possible. If he blindly goes against Dustless, he will just be asking for trouble. There is no problem to participate, but there is a condition. About half an hour later, Dustless, who couldn't stand Sengoku's words, said. Sengoku's face was slightly stiff, and then he remembered the sensitive situation. He gritted his teeth and said, "As long as it is within my power and does not violate the Marine's philosophy, I can promise you." Dustless nodded and was about to turn off the Den Den Mushi when Sengoku's intriguing voice suddenly sounded again, and the tone was full of different meanings. "What do you think of the three of them?" Sengoku's eyes narrowed slightly as he asked quietly. Dustless always felt that Sengoku's words had a hidden meaning. The three of them were naturally Sakazuki, Kazan, and Borsellino. Is this old guy looking for a candidate for the future fleet admiral now? Dustless was secretly surprised as an absurd idea suddenly popped up. Sengoku has not been in the position of fleet admiral for long, about 6 or 7 years, and he is still at the peak of his life. It is too early to choose a candidate for the future fleet admiral. Everyone has their own strengths. Borsellino, Kazan, and Sakazuki are all trustworthy, and they can all be stable in the future. Dustless took a sip of tea and said softly. At the same time, he also understood the intention of Sengoku. This old guy was nothing more than wanting to sound out his opinion. The candidate for the fleet admiral is not something that Sengoku can choose by himself. Generals like Dustless, Garp, and Vice Admiral Tsuru all have the right to speak. Now he is just asking for Dustless's opinion. As for the suitable candidate in Sengoku's mind, it is naturally Kazan. Not only him, perhaps Garp and Vice Admiral Tsuru are more inclined to Kazan. Now the most important thing is Dustless, the candidate decided by the marine giants. In the future, once Sengoku retires, Kazan will take over Sengoku's position. Chapter 640. Marlin's numerous warring states were full of hope, looking forward to Dustless's answer, their eyes anxiously waiting. A person like Sengoku was also a true man of justice, the complete opposite of those who talk about justice all day long but are perfunctory in their hearts. Although the things he dealt with were a bit dirty, at least he was more decent than people like Sakazuki. Unlike Sakazuki's extreme justice, Sengoku is more about benevolence and righteousness, which is somewhat similar to Kazan. Of course he's more reliable than Sakazuki. Forgive me for being blunt, but there's a world of difference between the two. Dustless looked at Kazan with admiration and didn't hesitate to send Sakazuki to hell. It stands to reason that Sakazuki is an extreme person. In order to maintain the rule of Tenryubito and the world government, he can sacrifice anyone. Maintaining the rule of the world government is naturally a disguised protection of Tenryubito. But Dustless knows that Sakazuki is a loyal dog of Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars. In the future, Sengoku supported Kuzan to be the Marine Headquarters Fleet Admiral. Because Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, supported Sakazuki, the position of Fleet Admiral was turned to this kid. Later, the two sides had a fierce battle in Punk Hazard, and Sakazuki suppressed Kazan. Dustless naturally doesn't want the leader of the Marine to become a dog of Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, in the future. Sometimes he and Sengoku are indeed at odds with each other, but on the contrary sometimes they also need to stand in the same trench. Marlin is waiting for you. Hearing this, Sengoku's tight heart was put down and he smiled happily. His face turned sunny and outlined a smile. He also thought that Dustless would support Sakazuki. After all, Sakazuki's rise to power is more in line with the interests of Tenryubito. This time, Dustless, who always cheats his teammates, finally gave his support. Time passed in a flash. Unknowingly, 3 days had already passed. Dustless's government ship arrived at Marlin, and Sengoku himself came to greet him. Unlike the past, at this moment, the Marine headquarters was full of laughter and lanterns. I am also an artistic person. Seeing Dustless looking at Marin with interest, Sengoku said proudly. The outside world's impression of the Marine headquarters is that they are big and rough, but in fact, Sengoku himself is a calligraphy master, and it is said that when he was a child he won first place in calligraphy. It's the most important event in the past few decades. It's indeed worth mobilizing so many people, Dustless said as if it was a matter of course. The reason why Sengoku is so exaggerated is actually to take the opportunity to intimidate the pirates all over the world. The lineup of the 3 admirals is enough to make all the pirates all over the world scared. The idea was a little naive, but it was very practical. Dustless also enjoyed the treatment of a head of state. Surrounded by a group of senior Marine officials, he went to the Marine headquarters in the center of Marlin. The Marine soldiers along the way were confident and encouraged. Speaking of which, I've always had a question. After seeing that there was no one around, Dustless leaned close to Sengoku's ear and asked, I know that there are gangs in the Marine, but why is that kid Sakazuki's hand so long that he became the guest of the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars? Dustless asked doubtfully. Sakazuki became the Fleet Admiral because of the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars. Sengoku's face solidified and the corner of his eyes spread as he whispered, I don't know much about this. Maybe the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, value his style of doing things. In troubled times, a resolute Marine general is needed to intimidate the world. Dustless gently nodded and reluctantly accepted Sengoku's words. As the only admiral at present, Dustless's arrival immediately attracted everyone's attention, including the retired Z, but after looking at Dustless he ignored him. Regarding this, Wuchen was too lazy to say more. Z, this old man's temper was too stubborn. The ceremony was extremely fast, and it was simply announced to the world through the video Den Den Mushi. In addition, after Sengoku made an impassioned declaration, the ceremony was hastily completed. The 3 admirals also got new nicknames Akainu, Akiji, Kizaru. This is also a combination of their fruitability and behavior. The atmosphere in the office was depressing, and there were only a few people. Kizaru, Akiji, Akainu and others were also in high spirits. After decades of being a Marine Vice Admiral, now the hard days are finally over. Ka. At this moment, the office door was pushed open, and several people with strange appearances suddenly came into view. Who ordered you to come here? Sengoku frowned and looked slightly dissatisfied. Looking closely, these people are CP0. They are not under the management of the Marine, nor under the jurisdiction of the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars. They only serve one target so far, Celestial Dragons. This group of guys. Marine Headquarters Admiral promotion has nothing to do with them. Dustless also frowned. For this group of CP0 who dressed like the indigenous people, Dustless is really not interested even if their service target is Celestial Dragons. Dustless is Celestial Dragons, but unfortunately he is not qualified to order them, and he can't even find the shadow of these CP0. With the attitude of watching the play, Dustless bowed his head and was silent. He suddenly remembered 6 or 7 years ago when he first came to this world he met Celestial Dragon's fiancée. She seemed to have an inextricable relationship with CP0. In fact, it's not only Dustless who can't order these CP0, many Celestial Dragons don't have such qualifications. Charles Ross, who was beaten last time in the Sabaody Archipelago, may not even know the existence of this organization. Even if they were really serving the celestial dragons, they would be serving the powerful and influential people among the celestial dragons. Dustless's eyes instinctively fell on Akainu, but this guy still had a serious look on his face, which showed that it had nothing to do with him. All the people present were puzzled. Chapter 641. Even Garp, who was snoring, woke up from his half-asleep state and opened his eyes. He was disgusted and deeply curious about these mice who had been hiding in the dark all year round. The more mysterious things are, the more attractive they are, which is human nature. The new three admirals also looked at the sudden appearance of CP0. To some extent, any action they take represents the Tenryubito behind the scenes. Akainu, Akiji, and Kizaru also have different views. Akainu is expressionless, Kizaru is touching his messy stubble with interest. As for Akiji, there is a little disgust and he is not interested in this group of people. The high-level Marines present, their eyes are faintly aimed at the members of the CP0. The mice that have been hiding in the dark suddenly burst out one day, anyone will feel strange. This group of professional servants are Tenryubito's lackeys, and the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, have no right to interfere with them, let alone Sengoku. Sorry, you are not among the objects we report to. The tall, expressionless man said, and his indifferent voice coincides with the machine. Sengoku's eyebrows were straight when he heard this, and the nameless fire in his heart rose rapidly. He felt like he was hit in the face. The implication of this remark is that Sengoku is not qualified to listen to their report. This is the Marine headquarters of Marin. Sengoku said in a low voice, suppressing his inner flame. The CP0 member who spoke before didn't care and took Sengoku's words as wind. Although the two different organizations belong to the same organization, they are destined not to have much intersection in this life. Marine belongs to the world government while CP0 belongs to Tenryubito, and the two are completely unrelated. Just when everyone was puzzled, the eyes of CP0 members were strangely focused on Dustless, and the 3 CP0 members who came looked at him like this. These guys, are they? Dustless looked at them without fear and his eyes were as calm as autumn water, and he had faintly guessed their purpose. If CP0 is looking for trouble with him, there is no other reason than one. Yukishi. Thinking of this, Dustless's eyes, which were as calm as an ancient well, suddenly shot out a cold light. The dragon has a reverse scale and you will die if you touch it. Lois South, Saint, should understand what kind of place Mariehua is, and suddenly a strange kid whose birth and origin are unknown suddenly popped up dash. Strange little ghosts? Is this something you can call me? Watch your attitude, you're just a lackey. The demonic whisper suddenly resounded through the ears, and the CP0 who spoke suddenly froze. Suddenly, he felt a sudden pain on the left side of his face, and his body was hit by a cannonball. Ka. With a loud rumble, Dustless opened up a hole in the solemn office, and a cool breeze rushed in through the large hole. Not only did the cold wind not extinguish the hot and dry atmosphere, but it also heated up along with Dustless's sudden attack. A group of Marine executives looked at the murderous Dustless and then saw the members of CP0. They were also members of the same force. When they were about to persuade the two sides to stop, Sengoku shook his head without a trace. He signaled everyone not to act rashly. This is a matter between Tenryubito. It's better if they don't get involved, and Sengoku is also happy to see CP0 get beaten up. A group of self-righteous idiots, it seems that this guy is really angry. That little girl's position in his heart is higher than everything. Sengoku was surprised. For the first time, Sengoku felt that Dustless was such a bloody person. The boiling killing intent that came out of him was like a god or a demon. It seemed that he could hear the unwilling roar of the hell's undead, sharp and penetrating, making people involuntarily tremble with fear. Sengoku suddenly discovered that Dustless can't rub sand in his eyes. It's best not to try to anger him. No one can bear the terrible consequences. Dustless's murderous look is just because of a strange little ghost. If the little girl named Yuki is really kidnapped one day. Sengoku felt a chill when he thought about it. Don't forget your identity, trash. His cold eyes stared at one of the CP0 members who was seriously injured and fell to the ground, and even his body was still boiling. Wu Chen's hoarse voice was like a wild beast breaking out of the cage, full of violence and destruction. Especially when those scarlet eyes stared at anyone would feel as if there was a blade on their back. And you too. His eyes suddenly fell on the remaining 2 CP0 members, and the blood in his eyes made their faces change greatly. The strange red light seemed to be able to distort time and space, revealing the gravitational force that will tear them to pieces. they retreated out of instinctive fear. Bullying the weak and fearing the strong, he's cuter. Garp laughed happily. He couldn't help but feel speechless for Sengoku. When facing Sengoku just now, the momentum of this group of CP0 members was still on par with him, or even higher than Sengoku. On the other hand, Dustless is as scared as a mouse seeing a fat cat. Sengoku's face is indifferent. A long illness makes a good doctor. He has been used to being slapped in the face. Over time he has also developed a body of steel and iron, which is entirely thanks to Dustless. Don't act rashly if you have something to say, we are actually just investigating her origin, there is no malice. Seeing their companion instantly killed by Dustless, the other two CP0 members had cold sweat on their foreheads. I naturally know that you have no malice, otherwise do you think you are standing and talking to me now? Raising his eyelids, Dustless said with no sadness or joy. The rage that broke out all over his body spread out like a tide. The whole office was frozen. Wu Chen's face was covered with frost. The flowing air turned into ice dregs. Crystal flowers formed in the air strangely. The atmosphere solidified instantly. At this moment, life seemed to be pulled out of the long river of time, no longer under his control, and time was frozen. Dustless took a step forward with no expression on his face, and the spirit of the remaining two CP0 members collapsed, and the unprecedented oppression made them almost suffocated. Chapter 642. The only two remaining CP0 members were desperate and depressed. It's not that they don't want to resist, but their struggle is meaningless. Dustless's attack speed is beyond the limit that normal humans can capture. Even if the observation Haki can perceive a little, the effect it can play is minimal. Their attack speed is not enough to deal with Dustless, and they can't keep up with Dustless's reaction rhythm, so all defense and counterattacks are a joke. Sometimes they can detect the existence of the enemy, but they can only passively take a beating, which is also a tragedy. Bastard, CP0 and Marine belong to the same force. The CP0 member with a long black scarf roared. Seeing that Sengoku and other Marine high-level officials were indifferent, they watched the show like an audience, and even Garp was drinking tea while eating the shellfish, and from time to time there would be a hiccup. When the only two remaining CP0 members saw this scene, 10 billion crows flew through their hearts. You want to drag us into the water when you see the situation is not good. It's still daytime and it's not time to dream. Sengoku sneered and ignored this group of people. Everyone knows how to play with the wind. CP0 belongs to Tenryubito, and Marine belongs to the world government. Although the two are of the same origin, they are also clearly separated. Our Marine naturally has no qualifications to intervene. Sengoku said bluntly with a gloating tone. This is a personal grudge between Tenryubito, and we have no right to interfere. Sengoku mercilessly sent the two CP0 members to hell. If they want to support Dustless, they will support him. Who told him to be a real Tenryubito? As for the lackeys of Tenryubito, they deserve to be killed. A mere lackey who dares to challenge the power of the master will be killed. You bastard! The CP0 member with a black scarf and the other CP0 member's face turned green. As the direct officials of Tenryubito, they are used to being a tyrant, and this is the first time they have been humiliated in front of their faces. I'm right in front of you. You dare to be distracted? I think your strength is good. A low, emotionless, demonic chant rang out behind the two of them. Dustless appeared from the void like a specter. There was no aura at all. Compared to his light-speed movement earlier, he was now traversing through space. Observation Haki can't detect it. This was all thanks to the heavenly hand power that the system had obtained in the past. Within a certain distance, he could exchange items without anyone noticing. Louis South, Saint, don't be impatient. We don't mean any harm. This is a little girl who came out of thin air. There is no detailed record of a young lady who came out of thin air. Maybe she is a spy arranged by some people with ulterior motives? The CP0 with a black scarf trembled and quibbled. She couldn't help cursing in her heart. She didn't expect Dustless to be so strong. Moreover, he didn't act according to common sense. His straightforward nature was a true portrayal of him. He would never accept any compromise. Dustless was still unmoved. He also knew that these CP0 were innocent, but it didn't matter. He had already planned to give the master behind the scenes of these CP0 a look. Tenryubito is a very mysterious group. Most of them are trash, but there are also some elites among elites. For example, the existence of the CP0 behind the scenes is an extremely powerful Tenryubito. Tenryubito like Dustless, let alone ordering CPO, He has never even heard of the headquarters of this department. Not only Dustless but most of Mariewa Tenryubito are like this. It can be seen that there is also a clear hierarchy among Tenryubito. Tenryubito like Dustless is more like a surface Tenryubito to some extent. In other words, most of Mariewa Tenryubito are more like chess pieces that are manipulated in front of others. I know you're innocent, but I'm going to clean you up. Qing Zhao's eyes were full of playfulness. Dustless said bluntly and indifferently. He just wants to use the faces of these people to hit the hidden Tenryubito behind the scenes. You? Hearing this, the only two remaining CP0 members were shocked and angry. Dustless's words completely treated them as dogs. Although they were dogs, after Dustless said so, their anger still soared. I won't kill you because I want the three of you to bring a message to the master behind the scenes. Dustless's cold eyes turned around the two of them and he said expressionlessly, it's not impossible to check the household registration, but you also need to see who the target is. If they think they are omnipotent, I'm sorry, I just like to deal with those who think they are outstanding. Dustless's words suddenly caused the two CP0 members to stare angrily. Unfortunately, in his eyes, it was just an ant's feeble protest, not even the slightest ripple splashed. Whiz. His body disappeared strangely for a moment, and when he reappeared, he was already beside the two of them. The extremely fast way of moving exceeded the limit of human nerve perception. All counterattacks are pale and powerless. Of course, this is also the reason why they don't train well. Terrifying people like Garp can perceive the existence of Dustless through observation hockey and can effectively counterattack. Ka. A crisp bone burst suddenly sounded, and then they saw Dustless's eyes were cold, and he grabbed the right arm of the CP0 member with one hand and easily crushed his entire arm. Ah! Ouch! The miserable roar of a pig suddenly jumped out of the CP0's mouth, full of unprecedented pain and hatred, complaining and hating Dustless's ruthlessness and blackness. It was just that Dustless turned a deaf ear to this. Yushi was his reverse scale, and this group of people actually dared to have designs on them. They did not tear them into pieces, but instead left them alive to struggle at death's door. This was already a great mercy. Dustless, on the other hand, felt that he was much kinder. If it was Huey G, she might have used Kill Grey Bones to blast him until there was nothing left. Chapter 643. Dustless's cold means made the Marines change their faces. Although it was not obvious, Sengoku could see a fear from the depths of their eyes. Looking closely, Dustless's eyes were cold, without any human emotions, and his quiet eyes were without ripples. If you have to find an emotion to replace it, it's contempt. The whole calf was covered with golden light in an instant, and Dustless swept out mercilessly. Boom! The originally closed conference room burst in an instant. A large fireball rose and the dazzling sunlight shone in, causing everyone to close their eyes subconsciously. The solemn conference room was disintegrated in an instant, and a group of Marine executives showed a stunned expression, and they all looked at Sengoku. Their brows wrinkled, and they all felt that Dustless had overdone it, and they felt that he was insinuating to the Marine headquarters. This guy. Is it possible that he wants to use this to establish his power? Sengoku guessed with a gloomy face. Then he felt that the possibility was great. Dustless wanted to take this opportunity to quietly release a signal to the entire Tenryubito, as well as the Marine headquarters and even the whole world. This is what happens to people who have ideas about my daughter. Royce South, please pay attention to the occasion here, this is the Marine headquarters. Staring at Dustless, Akainu stood up with a black face. Unlike other people, Akainu belongs to the kind of soldier with an extremely resolute character. He can't rub sand in his eyes, and he is extremely protective of the dignity and face of the Marine. Dustless took the opportunity to kick out the Marine conference room, which is equivalent to indirectly slapping their old face. Akainu naturally couldn't stand it. If it weren't for the identity gap between the two sides, Akainu would have melted Dustless at all costs. For an iron-blooded soldier like him, Dustless's actions have touched his bottom line. However, as the fleet admiral, Sengoku didn't say much, and he was not qualified to talk nonsense, and he was not qualified to blame Dustless. The faces of the Marines were not good. Dustless was obviously making things big, and he was quietly warning them that this was the result of offending him. I'm sorry, once people get old, their reason will be replaced by emotions, and they will regard this place as their own home. I'm sorry? I'll be responsible for sending someone to repair this place. With an awkward smile, Dustless said embarrassedly, but his tone was frivolous and indifferent. Sengoku's mouth twitched fiercely and he waved his hand, pretending to be generous and said, "There is no need to be an outsider. As an admiral of the Marine headquarters, it's not too much to say that Marin your own home." Home? Do you dare to be so arrogant? Sengoku's heart's heart. This was clearly Dustless purposely establishing his might, warning all of them in disguise. However, even if Dustless smashed the Marine conference room, Sengoku and other high-level Marines can't attack. First of all, he is a Tenryubito, and secondly, he is an admiral of the Marine headquarters. In addition, Dustless's unprecedented strength is the biggest concern. In a world where the strong are respected, whoever has the biggest fist has the right to speak. This loss is a sure thing. Sengoku's old face twitched and his face turned green. He had a feeling of leading a wolf into the house. He asked Dustless to support the Marines. He didn't expect that this time, because of the sudden appearance of CP0, he became the bitter object of Dustless's disguised prestige. He took the opportunity to let him smash the solemn conference room of the Marine headquarters. However, the opponent is a Tenryubito who has reached the peak of strength. Even if he is unwilling, he can only endure it. Sengoku's heart was depressed. The Marine headquarters can be said to be lying down this time. However, this group of guys. Sengoku couldn't help but shake his head and call them idiots. The identity of the boss behind this group of people is very exaggerated, enough to make the world tremble, but these CP0 are just dogs in the end. The reason why they are so arrogant is because they rely on their master behind the scenes. Dustless's scary aura didn't work in front of him. Bad luck. Sengoku stared fiercely at CP0 and simply chose to ignore them. As the Marine Fleet Admiral, Sengoku's every move is watched. A group of Marine executives saw that Sengoku turned a deaf ear and bowed their heads, holding the mentality of watching a play. Akainu, although unhappy, sat back in his original position. The Fleet Admiral didn't speak, and he had no status as an admiral. "You're the only one left," Dustless said with a smile as his eyes fell on the only remaining CP0 member. This guy is dressed more like a savage with unenlightened wisdom, wearing a flower petal similar to a sunflower around his neck, and the fear in his eyes are clear. Dustless once saw the members of CP0 by chance. Although this group of guys is also CP0, they are obviously different from the last time he saw them. Their strength is much weaker and they are not at the same level at all. The last time he auctioned Princess Otoheim, the CP0 he encountered, although there were only a few people, their strength was almost close to the level of an admiral. These street goods in front of him are only at the level of a vice admiral. It's no wonder that Sengoku will be disgusted with this group of insects. Their strength is not great, but they rely on the Tenryubito behind them. This kind of person is the most hateful. Take your companions and get away from me. The reason why I don't kill you is that I want to pass a message to your master behind the scenes. If you don't want to die, just come and find me. Wu Qin said impatiently with a cold voice as he withdrew his evil aura. It doesn't make sense to clean up these dogs. Even if all of them are killed, the effect will be minimal. The master behind the scenes will still do what he wants, and through CP0 Dustless he also learned the news he wanted. In this seemingly pirate world, the right to speak has always been in the hands of the Tenryubito. Seeing that Dustless was finally willing to stop, Sengoku led the high-level Marines with a sigh of relief. In any case, this is the Marine headquarters. When it comes to the Gorosei 5 Elder Stars, they will definitely be affected. After all, the Marines often appear in front of the world as the scapegoat of the world government. It would be best if Wu Qin could stop. Chapter 644. Seeing that Dustless was willing to let them go, the last CP0, who only had consciousness, recovered his desperate heart and looked at Dustless in fear. He couldn't even thank him and slipped away with his two unconscious companions. This is simply an undeserved disaster. It's just an investigation of Hoku and he almost lost his life here. It has already left a psychological shadow. I guess we're going to lose face again this time. Kiji whispered. The projection of the video Den Den Mushi did not end. It is estimated that the Marine headquarters will lose face again. Although it was done under emotional control, only ghosts know what the outside world thinks. The Marines led by Sengoku were speechless and they looked at Wu Chen's eyes and couldn't help but be filled with resentment. What are you looking at me for? I'm innocent. Seeing everyone looking at him with bad intentions, Dustless spread his hands and said that it had nothing to do with him. In his view, he was completely passive. If you want to complain, you can only blame the celestial dragons behind you. Sengoku rolled his eyes. This guy is really shameless. He beat people half to death and scared them into paralysis. He also said that it had nothing to do with him. Sengoku asked himself that he had never seen such a shameless person in his life. When he saw people, he hated himself even more. "You're innocent?" At this moment, Akainu stood up with a straight face and said in a gloomy and hoarse voice, "This is the Marine headquarters, not a vegetable market, and it's not a place for you celestial dragons to fight." His tone was not good and his words were quite harsh. Vegetable market? I don't think the Marine headquarters really has anything to do with the vegetable market. Otherwise, it's impossible for those cats and dogs to sneak in so casually. Looking at Akainu's eyes, Dustless said expressionlessly. The CP0 directly broke into the conference room, which is really no different from the vegetable market. It's even easier than entering the vegetable market. At least there are shouts in the vegetable market, and the Marine headquarters doesn't even have a ghost. As a Marine of absolute justice, you must maintain the justice and dignity of the Marine. If you can't do it, you will fail to live up to the word justice on your shoulders. With cold eyes, Akainu's hands were boiling, and the crimson magma was clearly visible. The scorching temperature was chilling and the steel would melt instantly. Dustless sneered. "I once said that your justice is just a child's play. What my heart points to is justice." His words were sharp and sarcastic. He suddenly found that after becoming an admiral, Akainu became more narrow-minded, or he became more extreme. "I don't care if you are a Tenryubito. Now that you are wearing a Marine Admiral's cloak, it means that you are a Marine Admiral. It is necessary to maintain the dignity of the Marine. This is your obligation." Akainu was boiling. It seems that as long as Dustless refuses, he will kill him on the spot. "Didn't I say, your justice is just a child's play? What my heart points to is justice." Wuchen didn't back down and shouted in a deep voice. Seeing the scene going wild again, Sengoku just smiled strangely and didn't do anything, nor did he speak. The deep smile on the corner of his mouth made people daydream. Kendo Red Lotus. The hot fist composed of lava came head-on. Seeing that Dustless didn't know what to do, Akainu was angry and took the lead. Staring at the oncoming red lava, which obviously condensed into the shape of a dog, Dustless laughed. "Sakazuki, I finally understand why your nickname is Akainu. This ferocious red dog head is a perfect match for the dark-skinned Sakazuki, who likes to wear red clothes. The outside world calls Sakazuki a ferocious red hound." Hearing this, Borsellino's smiling face suddenly solidified, and he looked at Dustless with a little dissatisfaction. He always felt that Dustless's words were deliberately aimed at him. Doesn't this mean that Kizaru is equal to a yellow monkey? Akiji didn't care about the reputation of the nickname. It's just a name for pirates. Kazan never cared about it. "Don't run." Seeing that Kazan didn't hide, Akainu said angrily. He launched an attack with all his strength, but Dustless didn't avoid it as if it didn't exist and turned a deaf ear to it. This is equivalent to indirectly slapping Akainu's face. How can he not do it? This kind of attack there is no need to hide. Dustless smiled indifferently. His right hand suddenly condensed a shining light. Looking at it under the sun, Dustless's whole arm was particularly dazzling, and his fist had turned black. With a sharp whistling sound, Dustless's body disappeared, and only a fleeting afterimage could be seen, and he rushed straight toward Sakazuki. Boom! The air suddenly exploded, and the crimson hound condensed from magma in Akainu's hand burst instantly, like raindrops falling, splashing magma all over the ground. His body couldn't help but retreat a few steps. "Congratulations on becoming a general, Sakazuki. However, your strength seems to be stuck at the lieutenant general level. You don't live up to your name," Dustless teased calmly. When his voice fell, his whole body suddenly entered the armament hockey state. It's good to use this guy to test the level of armament hockey. Dustless's body turned into a dark Iron Man, and even when he spoke, the sound of rolling steel came out of his teeth, and his momentum was no worse than Sakazuki's. This armament hockey attainment is good. Sitting next to Garp, Z nodded. Dustless's armament hockey made his eyes shine. "It's true, when I reached his current level, it took twice as long as him." Garp heard this and nodded, feeling thousands of emotions. A new generation replaces the old, and it won't be long before they disappear in this sea of strong people. Chapter 645. Z and Garp were talking. Both of them belonged to the same era, so naturally they could talk quickly. Especially since both of their temperaments were very similar. They were both upright and straightforward people. This is Sengoku's deliberate move. Z said in a low voice. He had already faintly guessed what Sengoku's purpose was. To be honest, he completely scoffed at Sengoku's approach, but he also knew that it was helpless. People live like this in the world, either go with the flow or change their fate. It should have been discussed in advance. In short, based on the current situation, Sakazuki is indeed unsuitable for the position of Fleet Admiral in the future. I think Louis South and Sengoku are deliberately targeting Akainu. Garp concluded with a gleam in his eyes. Z also slightly nodded. He could see the strangeness in it. Although the means can't be seen, Sengoku was also forced to do this. Akainu is an extreme person. If he becomes the Fleet Admiral, maybe the Marine really has no choice. Generally, after being promoted to Admiral, the future Fleet Admiral will be determined in advance just in case. Although it is superfluous, it is not a rule passed down. When Sengoku stepped into the position of Admiral, Sky planned to let Sengoku replace his position in the future. Akainu has the support of the Gorosei. It is almost certain that the Fleet Admiral will be his. Sengoku had to find another way. With this incident, he will attack Sakazuki's prestige. Although he is somewhat sorry, he can only do this. As for why Dustless agreed with Sengoku to plot against Sakazuki, the reason is that he doesn't want the future Fleet Admiral to become a dog of the Gorosei. So this time the main force to attack Sakazuki is Dustless. He is the only suitable one. Boom, 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 boom. The battle of Admiral level can be imagined. It is easy to see the mountains collapse and the sun and the moon lose their light. Dustless is fine. He is only using armament hockey to fight with Akainu. It is also a disguised exercise. As for Sakazuki, it is extremely exaggerated. The burning black smoke covered the sky. The dense black smoke even blocked half of the sky. The ground is also penetrated by the dark red lava. Sengoku frowned slightly when he saw this scene. He noticed the slight vibration of the ground. His observation hockey subconsciously opened, and groups of marine soldiers quickly came to support. Kazan. Hearing this, Akiji, who looked sleepy and lazy, opened his eyes and looked at Sengoku helplessly. After seeing his serious expression, he nodded. Asean. Gigantic circular ice layers rose from the ground, the large icicles reaching up to 70 feet tall. The center of the battlefield between Dustless and Sakazuki was a forbidden zone, isolated from the world. Bang, bang, bang. Every time the punches and kicks collided with each other, the air would explode. Every time the dull sound would be accompanied by a blazing wave of air, the air would emit white waves of air as if it was boiling. This was all thanks to Akainu. The power of the magma fruit should not be underestimated. Of course, Akainu himself also exerted its power to the extreme. Boom, boom, boom. With a loud bang, the air trembled violently. Both of them took a few steps back. It was obvious that Akainu was at a disadvantage. He retreated 5 or 6 meters in succession, while Dustless only took a few steps back. His dark face became more and more unsightly. This guy's attainment in armament hockey is so deep. Akainu's face was black and extremely ugly. In just a few breaths of time, hundreds of rounds of fierce confrontation have been exchanged. His magma fist did not cause much damage to Dustless, who was in armament hockey state. The battle scene was particularly fierce. Looking around, the ground has been replaced by lava, and the temperature has increased dozens of times in an instant. Conventional attacks can't hurt him, so Akainu stepped forward and almost instantly came in front of Dustless. His hand was burning with hot magma. Akainu. Boom, 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 the ground suddenly trembled. Akainu, who suddenly attacked, covered Dustless's face with his powerful fist. The rolling magma will burst in an instant, swallowing the whole head of Dustless. Even if you don't die, you will be seriously injured. Akainu breathed a sigh of relief. When fighting an expert like Dustless, one had to be tense at all times, and the slightest carelessness would cause one to be consigned to eternal damnation. So highly concentrating one's mind was naturally strenuous. Before Akainu could take a few breaths, his thick arm was suddenly grabbed by a thin little hand. Akainu was shocked and did not hesitate to burst back. The seemingly weak little hand was connected to the foundation of the whole world. He could not retreat at all. Even if you don't die, you will be seriously injured? What do you think that kind of fragile fist can do, Sakazuki? Or even after you are promoted to Admiral, the level is still the same. Or your justice is as fragile as this fist? Dustless's whole head was burning with flames. Even so, the contemptuous ridicule fell on Sakazuki's ears. Even the magma could not swallow Dustless. It was extremely strange. What goes around comes around. This time it's my turn to fight back. His left arm tightly grasped Akainu's arm. Dustless slowly raised his right arm. The black light wrapped around his fist, under the illumination of the sun, was invincible. His pupils suddenly shrank. Akainu smelled an unprecedented danger and did not hesitate to burst out, armament haki hardening. Coincidentally, the same dark skin as Dustless instantly spread all over his body. Boom boom boom, the tender iron fist roared mercilessly. Akainu's old face suddenly turned ugly, and immediately flew upside down like a cannonball, hitting a deep hole in Akiji's frozen isolation circle. Looking closely, Akainu's old face was crooked. This kid is good at hitting the face. Sengoku, Garp, and others saw a chill. They looked at each other and could see the entanglement in each other's eyes. They could clearly see the traces of dislocation in Akainu's chin. But when they think about it, only Akainu's face was swept to the ground. The position of the fleet admiral will not be his turn for the time being. As for the future, they can drag it out for a day. Chapter 646. Kizaru touched his chin and then looked at Dustless, who was exuding black light. His shoulders trembled and he instinctively took a step back. This guy punched Akainu's chin out of place. What does that mean? In the future, his masculine face would be ruined. To put it more simply, it is disfigurement. Akainu's mouth was full of blood stains. He climbed out of the ice cellar without changing his face. He touched his chin subconsciously and looked as usual. It's just a dislocation. He can recover later. After realizing that there was no problem, his eyes continued to stare firmly at Dustless. Justice, justice. Suddenly shocked, the words in his mouth stopped abruptly. Akainu suddenly realized that he couldn't speak clearly. Because Dustless's strength was too deadly, he couldn't speak clearly. Thinking of this, Akainu's mouth twitched fiercely, his lungs surged, and he almost spat out blood uncontrollably. His eyes suddenly flashed scarlet blood, and his killing intent soared. If his eyes could kill, Dustless would have become a bare skeleton at this moment. Wu Qin, who was being glared at, was helpless. Don't look at me like that. I didn't mean it. I thought your armament haki could defend me, so I didn't hold back. I'm sorry. Dustless apologized seriously. Hearing this, Akainu still glared at him, and his face was particularly strange. The Marines around him wanted to laugh, but they didn't dare to laugh. They closed their mouths with difficulty. Their faces had turned red, and their shoulders were shaking uncontrollably. Obviously, it was extremely uncomfortable. If it weren't for the face of Admiral Akainu, they would have laughed out loud. No, don't apologize, I will take it back, Akainu said. In the end, his old face turned green, and he couldn't wait to give himself a big slap. When the sneak attack was successful, if he could avoid it, there wouldn't be such a tragedy. Really, then I'm really looking forward to it. Looking at Akainu, Dustless couldn't help laughing. The completely slanted mouth was really funny. Even if Dustless tried to suppress it, he still smiled because Akainu's appearance was too funny. Hearing this, Akainu's body boiled more lava and the scope was larger. The entire center of the battle was almost filled with lava everywhere. This is Akainu's ability, Magma Fruit. Its power is beyond imagination. Suddenly, countless dense and hot magma surged and condensed on Akainu's right arm. In an instant, it expanded dozens of times and condensed into a giant flame fist, exuding the power of destruction. Great fire breath. The giant flaming fist formed from lava whistled through the air with boundless power, exuding an aura that could destroy the heavens. It was enough to crush any living being that came into contact with it. Upon seeing this, the space beside Dustless twisted rapidly, and a small vortex appeared, and an ancient long blade emerged from it. I was wondering why I didn't see the first ghost blade when I went to Mariehua last time. It turned out to be in his hands. Sengoku was surprised. Just at a glance, he recognized the first ghost blade in Dustless's hand. This powerful demon blade is world famous and has been in the hands of the bald Gorosei, 5 elder stars. Does it even need to be said? He must have used some kind of underhanded method to get it. But then again, from the looks of it, this guy has successfully mastered the first-generation ghost blade. Garp exclaimed, his eyes widening. The legend of the first ghost blade has been spread in the world for a long time. Every time it appears, it is a world-class major disaster. This legendary blade has been kept by the bald Gorosei, 5 elder stars. They didn't expect it to be in the hands of Dustless, and looking at his relaxed demeanor, it is obvious that he can easily control the evil nature of the first ghost blade. The power is good, and the characteristics of the magma fruit are vividly displayed. However, there is a saying that everything restrains each other. Maybe I am destined to be the one who restrains you. Dustless stared at the oncoming magma fist calmly. He was as motionless as a mountain, and deep in his eyelids, he maintained the indifference of an ancient well from beginning to end. The whole person was as quiet and tranquil as a statue, with a noble and elegant temperament. After a few breaths, Dustless's eyes suddenly widened, emitting a cold light. The first ghost blade in his hand was also unsheathed in an instant, and a blood-red cold light shot out, penetrating the incoming giant magma fist. Poochie! The sound of cloth being torn easily sounded. Looking up, they saw that the giant magma fist was close to Dustless, and it burst open in an instant. It was cut in half by the bloody slash. This kind of flashy trick can't touch my body, and the effect it has on me is minimal. If you want to use it to defeat me, it is tantamount to an ant shaking the sky. The light and indifferent voice resounded through the sky, accompanied by a roar. The first ghost blade returned to the scabbard. Looking at it, Dustless was stunned. Akainu disappeared strangely, leaving only the magma on the ground. His observation haki was spread out, but he didn't even notice the existence of this guy. Dustless remained vigilant. He was not stupid enough to think that Akainu would stop halfway. Boom boom boom, suddenly the magma under the ground trembled, and the irregular vibration was limited to the area where Dustless and Akainu fought. Obviously it was man-made. His pupils narrowed and observation haki spread out again. This guy is like a cunning rabbit. He has the appearance of a reckless man, but his heart is very careful. Dustless admired Akainu with a smile of admiration. The characteristic of magma fruit is that it can turn itself into a magma man and integrate into the magma. The reason why Akainu escaped the perception of observation haki was that he integrated into the magma deep in the ground. Most of the islands in the New World are composed of erupting magma, and Marine Headquarters is no exception. This guy knows how to use the magma deep in the ground to attack Dustless, and his power and grade have increased a lot. Chapter 647. The ground throbbed and twisted as if something was about to break out of its shell, constantly protruding upward. The lava on the ground surged violently like a tide for a moment. Everyone's heart was covered with an unprecedented depression and silence. Bastard, that kid is really angry. Does he want to destroy Marlindo? Sengoku seemed to have guessed what kind of exaggerated trick Sakazuki used. He roared with a pale face. The violent vibration continued to spread, and the isolation area temporarily created by Akiji gradually collapsed. The initial range was limited to the area where Dustless and Sakazuki fought. Until the end, with the power of the volcano, it spread to every corner of Marlindo. There's no mistake, it's that trick. It seems that Akainu kid is angry. Yes, he was beaten so badly. If it was me, I would also fight him to death. Garp said sympathetically. If his chin was crooked, maybe he would be angrier than Akainu. Well, so what? He pulled the entire Marine Headquarters into the war. Sengoku snorted with dissatisfaction. If personal grievances were mixed in this competition, everything would change. Indeed, Meteor Volcano is enough to cover a large area of Marlindo, but with us here, what are you afraid of? Garp patted Sengoku's shoulder and laughed. Easy for you to say. Looking at Garp with dissatisfaction, Sengoku also turned his head to look at this unprecedented scene. Indeed, as Garp said, there was no need to worry. The range is amazing. Dustless nodded secretly. He was quite surprised by the range of this trick. The vibration continued to spread, as if Sakazuki could cover the entire Marlindo if he wanted. It was exaggerated beyond imagination, and the scale was even wider than Yasukani no Magatama. Such a great improvement was entirely due to Sakazuki's magma from the underground volcano. After combining with the power of nature, there was a qualitative change. Ka. The solid ground suddenly burst open, and the void turned fiery red in an instant, and the hot temperature evaporated the moisture in the atmosphere. Then a sharp whistling sound resounded through the sky, accompanied by the words Meteor Volcano. The ground changed dramatically. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, countless flame fists rose from the ground, covering the void, and almost in the blink of an eye, they filled the entire sky. It was impossible to estimate how many there were, but the power was extremely frightening. Clang. The first-generation Ghost Blade was unsheathed again, and a sharp blood-red light shot out, easily destroying the flaming fists that came out of the ground. However, there were simply too many of them. Even if Dustless could destroy one, two, in the face of hundreds and thousands of them, he could only sigh. Even if he wanted to stop them, he could only watch them fly into the void without using any other abilities. Countless flaming fists swept into the void and strangely disappeared. It was as if everything had ended and peace was restored. The boiling lava on the ground also stopped flowing. Everything came to an end. However, in the next second, the clear sky was thrown into chaos again. Looking up, countless flaming fists whizzed down. The densely packed area was enough to make one feel despair. The pressure from the huge magma fists was suffocating. Forcing me to use other abilities is a form of recognition for you, Sakasuji. You should be glad that I haven't used that ability more than a few times since I came to this world. Dustless lamented. Nonsense. I hope you can still be so calm when the countless magma fists hit you. Sakasuji glared at Dustless. In fact, he was looking forward to Dustless begging for mercy, but he was destined to be disappointed. Dustless didn't even look at him from beginning to end. His calm eyes stared at the descending magma fists. Countless magma fists. Do you think victory is in your hands, that you can easily defeat me? Don't have such a ridiculous idea. The greater the hope, the greater the disappointment. Dustless mercilessly attacked Sakasuji. However, Akainu maintained his arrogance at all times. Obviously he was very confident in his moves. Dustless's words went in one ear and out the other. A lot? It's a lot. But it's a pity because I have more. Kaibao of the King. The void behind Dustless shook violently in an instant. Countless vortexes suddenly appeared. Then, as many as the stars in the sky, all kinds of weapons poked their heads out of these vortexes. The exquisite craftsmanship and the sharp radiance made it obvious that it was not an ordinary item. Especially the exaggerated number of tens of thousands, as many as the grains of sand in the Ganges. It completely exceeded the concept of many. The entire sky was instantly dyed golden. How is this possible? What ability is this? The Marines led by Sengoku were stunned. Even Sakazuki was stunned as he stared at the divine weapons in the void. He wanted to count how many weapons there were, but he found that he couldn't count the exact number. One after another, a steady stream of weapons drilled out of the void. Tens of thousands. This dense number compared to the falling flame fist was obviously dwarfed. Akainu's meteor volcano was not worth mentioning. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. With a gentle wave of his hand, countless divine weapons rose into the air, rushing towards the lava fist that was descending from the sky. Boom boom boom. The silent void was able to explode. The weapons in the Kaibao of the King were destroyed and melted, but the same was true for the magma fist falling from the sky. The destroyed weapons were once again complacently replenished from the Kaibao of the King, and Akainu's meteor volcano was obviously not the same. It's over, Sakasuji. Don't ask for trouble. Looking at Akainu faintly, Dustless said bluntly, in human form you and I may be evenly matched, but when I look down at you from the perspective of God, any resistance is a futile struggle. Chapter 648. Sakazuki's basically black face became even gloomier. Even if he tried to hide his inner calmness, his anxious expression was exposed to Dustless's eyes. The air was densely packed with all kinds of weapons, almost boundless, like a mountain. Sakazuki's breathing was dozens of times more difficult than usual. It seems that your justice is nothing more than this, Sakazuki. Dustless said calmly while holding back his inner smile. Akainu was covered in scarlet blood, and his chin was tilted by Dustless. The first impression he gave was that he was particularly miserable. In fact, this guy didn't suffer much damage, and Akainu's armament haki has reached the realm of perfection, resisting most physical attacks. Over? It's still far from over. Staring at Dustless, Sakazuki shouted. He is the kind of person who is extremely extreme. As long as his combat power is still there, it is tantamount to a fool's dream to want him to give up his views, which is unrealistic. In other words, as long as he didn't die and still had a breath of life left in him, he would never stop. Insensible man. Raising his eyelids, Dustless said hopelessly. This kind of stubborn person, unless he can't stand up, it is impossible for him to give up. Sakazuki's stubbornness and fortitude are known to the world. Bring it on. With a snort, Sakazuki's fighting spirit soared. The moment his voice fell, a black shadow fell in front of him in the blink of an eye, dead water silent eyes without luster, looking at Sakazuki as indifferent as a corpse. How can his speed be so fast? Sakazuki couldn't help but exclaim, his face was incredulous. Dustless's strange movement just now seemed to ignore the distance. Looking at Akainu's shocked eyes, Dustless didn't choose to rush, just looked at him. Speed? What is speed? Speed is distance. Dustless's whisper sounded in Sakaski's ear with a wise tone. What do you think the definition of distance is, 1 meter or 10,000 meters? Or perhaps it's even further away. For Dustless's words, Akainu was at a loss. He was confused and didn't quite understand the meaning. Don't you understand? Everyone's definition of distance is actually different. The ends of the earth in your eyes, in my eyes, is just a snap of the finger. If I explain it this way, you should understand what it means. Whether it is a short meter or a distant 10,000 meters, the meaning is the same for Dustless. The distance between 1 meter and 10,000 meters is just a thought. Are you kidding me? Akainu roared with a fierce look. At the same time, a huge magma arm condensed on his right arm, and mercilessly blasted toward Wu Qin, who was close at hand. The expanding magma fist was enough to devour and destroy everything in the world. Fire breath. In the end, the winner is the winner, the winner is the winner, the winner, the loser, the winner, the winner, the winner, the winner, the winner, the winner. The winner was the king and the loser was the bandit. This was a principle that had not changed since ancient times. After all, history was written by the victors. Boom, 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 the splashing flames engulfed Dustless, and the whole person was wrapped in magma. This scene looked numb, and even with the defense of armament hockey, the surface of the skin would be seriously burned. Akainu's face was full of hope, his eyes were fierce, his right arm once again condensed boiling hot magma. This slight physical damage is far from enough to hurt Dustless, he must work harder. Fire breath. His arms condensed into giant magma fists, Sakazuki attacked mercilessly, the bursting magma swallowed Dustless layer by layer, the hot temperature is enough to melt steel. After dozens of times, Akainu was able to stop. Even with armament hockey defense, he will die. Seeing this, Akainu breathed a sigh of relief. His body with magma evaporated the sweat stains. The strength suppression brought by Dustless was like encountering the legendary natural enemy. It was a tricky situation. It's over. The powerful voice spread out like a wave, fell into the ears of all the Marines present. Everyone nodded slightly. At this point, Akainu is indeed winning. It's over? It's really over, but unfortunately the person who was defeated is called Sakazuki. The voice resounded through the endless void, full of rich magic, lingering in the sky for a long time. It didn't dissipate, it resounded in everyone's ears. Shinra Tensei. Boom. The thick magma wrapped around Dustless's body burst open, bounced off by a powerful force. The intact Dustless was exposed to everyone's ears. Impossible. Seeing this, Sakazuki's pupils dilated. He rubbed his eyes, thinking that he was old. Dustless didn't care about him. His palm covered the area where Sakazuki stood. A strange black hole appeared in his palm, revealing a strong gravitational force. Gravity is the natural enemy of all living and non-living things in nature. Bensho Tensei. Akainu's body flew over uncontrollably. He struggled hard. Even if he gritted his teeth to stop his body, he couldn't do anything. Under the pull of gravity, the dominance of his entire body belongs to Dustless. Akainu himself can only play a small role, like a stone thrown into the sea. It only caused a short ripple, and was immediately forcibly pulled over by Dustless. After just a few breaths, Akainu fell in front of Dustless. The deep eye sockets turned rapidly, the darkness was gradually swallowed and replaced by blood red. Dustless's eye sockets changed dramatically, the mysterious eyes composed of pentagrams were clearly visible. It's useless to struggle, this time I will finish you completely. Even if you are made of iron, I will put you to sleep. The pentagrams in the pupil of the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan twisted, like ripples on the calm sea. Akainu was swallowed and annihilated in an instant. Tsukuyami. Chapter 649. Tsukuyami. As Dustless's voice fell, Akainu's violent eyes were as still as water, and the boiling lava all over his body also calmed down and returned to normal. His eyes were drowsy. Akainu looked at Dustless's face and intended to open his eyes and fight again, but he was powerless. He closed his eyes involuntarily and fell to the ground awkwardly. Seeing Akainu fall to the ground asleep, Sengoku, the leader of the Marines, felt relieved and breathed the fresh air easily. Just now, because of the Akainu fruit, the air that entered the lungs was abnormally hot and could easily burn human organs. You've gone too far. Seeing that there was no one around, Sengoku quietly swept to Dustless's face. Because of the deliberate control of the two, Marlindo was not affected. The area where Dustless and Akainu fought has become a pile of ruins. The scene of devastation was unbearable to look at, and the strange smell of burning was filling the air, making people nauseous. Don't blame me, it's all thanks to Sakasugi. Also hit Akainu's face, that's your order. Dustless looked innocent and pushed all the blame to Fleet Admiral Sengoku. My order? Sengoku's old face suddenly turned red. If Dustless was really willing to obey his orders, the pirates in the various seas of the world may have been caught a few years ago. It doesn't matter, just find someone to redo it. Waving his hand, Sengoku was relieved. Looking at the fainted Sakasugi on the ground, Sengoku's old face flashed with embarrassment. To be honest, the reason why he took the opportunity to suppress Akainu was that this guy was too close to Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, and the position of the future Fleet Admiral may be close to him. Sengoku didn't want Akainu to take the position of Marine Fleet Admiral, so he had to join forces with Dustless to suppress his arrogance. It's best to make Sakasugi make a fool of himself in front of the world. In this way Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, will hesitate. A Marine Fleet Admiral full of dirt, sitting on the top of the Marine will only make the military unstable. He only has himself to blame, Dustless said expressionlessly. The purpose of teaming up with Sengoku is very simple. This guy is a loyal dog of the Gorosei, and he has countless grievances with the Gorosei. Naturally, he doesn't want Sakazuki to become the Fleet Admiral. Thus, Lang Lang tricked him under the heavens. In truth, it didn't matter who the Admiral was except for Sakazuki. Is he okay? Seeing Akainu sleeping like a dead pig, Sengoku doubted. Hearing this, Dustless rolled his eyes, and a wicked smile flashed at the corner of his mouth. He gave Sengoku a look and said with a chuckle, "You can rest assured that Sakazuki will be very happy." Seeing Dustless's cunning smile, Sengoku's cheeks were full of strangeness. He knew that Dustless must be up to no good. At the same time he also faintly guessed what Dustless meant. Then he shook his head and was too lazy to say more. Anyway, it has nothing to do with him. The plan given to Dustless didn't say that Sakazuki would be like this. Time flies, 7 days of effort quietly slipped through the fingers. The appearance of the 3 admirals was an unprecedented disaster for the entire pirate group. Akainu was fine. He was exhausted by Dustless's Tsukuyomi, and temporarily recuperated in the marine headquarters. As for Akiji and Kizaru, they were pulled by Sengoku as coolies to lead the fleet at hand to sweep the new world. A new broom sweeps clean, this is what it means. Countless great pirates were locked and impelled down forever. You bastard, I will not let you go. A pig-like howl resounded throughout the marine headquarters. Sakazuki angrily smashed open the door of the fleet admiral's office. His scarlet eyes stared at Dustless, his whole body emitting hot lava. Sakazuki, give me a distraction. The coldness on Sengoku's face disappeared in a flash, and he warned coldly, this is the first and last time, or you will get out of here immediately. Sengoku's tone was a little cold and murderous. This was his fleet admiral's office. Sakazuki's behavior didn't put him in his eyes at all. I'm sorry, this is my fault. Sakazuki's face stiffened as he realized his mistake and apologized solemnly. His huge fists were clenched with water stains, and his piercingly cold eyes were locked on Wuchen. His breathing increased several times in an instant, and his panting appearance was like a cow on the verge of despair. One could see the blue veins on his forehead. What the hell is going on? Sengoku frowned and asked. Akainu's character is irritable, but he can control his emotions. Especially in front of the fleet admiral, he is often depressed. He is a man of virtue. Few people know that he can curse people like today. Sakazuki, are you talking about me? I made you have wet dreams for 7 days in a row. You should thank me. I'm thinking about you. Dustless winked at Sakazuki. Hearing this, the old men, including Sengoku and Garp, showed a playful expression. Their eyes were empty and unfocused. They seemed to be thinking about how beautiful Sakazuki was. Seeing this, Sakazuki's old face collapsed. His whole face was twitching and he was trembling with anger. His cold eyes were deeper and almost turned into a substantial murderous aura. What kind of scene he saw in Tsukuyomi's world could indeed be regarded as a wet dream. However, the objects were all strong, up to 10 meters tall or even taller. Giant clan with thick chest and leg hair. What made Sakazuki vomit blood the most was that in Tsukuyomi's world, he couldn't resist Dustless at all. He could only resign himself to being tortured by the group of giant clan women for 7 days in a row. It left a serious psychological barrier. Chapter 650. Dustless's smiling expression, like a sharp thorn, pierced into Akainu's heart, which was particularly painful. However, he couldn't accuse Dustless of his crimes to Sengoku and Garp. After being tortured by the giant with long chest hair and leg hair for 7 days, even if his face is as thick as a city wall, Akainu would find it difficult to speak. Not to mention telling Sengoku and others about the painful content of the unbearable memory, that's just asking for humiliation. Akainu can't say anything and can only endure it. He swore that he would definitely teach Wuchin a lesson in the future. After all, it's about his face. It's not an open thing. If it gets out, the name Sakazuki will definitely become a laughingstock all over the world. He glared at Dustless and then sat on the sofa in silence. Seeing Akainu sitting down, Sengoku nodded slightly and smiled pleasantly. It seemed that he was quite satisfied with Akainu's attitude. They must work together in the same organization. After a while, Sengoku began to talk again. The main content was the situation of the world, pirates everywhere, and of course the organization Shichibukai. That heavenly Yaksha Doflamingo has the makings of a king, Garp suddenly said in a tone of praise. After becoming the king of Dressrosa, Doflamingo did not implement the imagined tyranny, but showed the spirit of a great monarch. The pirates who landed on Dressrosa were also defeated by Doflamingo, which was a big help to the Marine in disguise. He has some ability. Even if he doesn't want to admit it, Sengoku has to deny that Doflamingo has some skills. Dustless smiled mysteriously. This group of people is terrible. If they know what Doflamingo did, they will vomit blood and die. The reason why Dressrosa is so peaceful now is entirely because of Doflamingo's men, Sugar, who turned all the people who resisted into dolls. That's why Dressrosa is harmonious. However, one thing is undeniable. After Doflamingo became the king of Dressrosa, he did help the Marines a lot because the second island they entered was Dressrosa. The pirates who wanted to land on the island for supplies were all killed by Doflamingo in various cruel means, and the number of pirates in the New World decreased a lot in a short time. This may be the fundamental reason why Sengoku thanked him. A pirate is always a pirate, and Doflamingo is no exception. My men recently reported that the children in the periphery of Dressrosa have mysteriously disappeared. Maybe he did it? Akainu said with deep pain. He has no good feelings for pirates, even the 7 warlords of the sea is no exception. Hearing this, Dustless raised his eyebrows without a trace. To be honest, he didn't quite understand what Akainu said, but it seems to be related to Doflamingo. Dustless estimated that it was most likely an experiment on human body enlargement. This kind of inhumane experiment had to be carried out on children. They would be locked in a specific environment and silently observe their growth cycle. I also heard about it. It seems to be the cause of the shipwreck. Sengoku frowned. As for the person who reported the news of the shipwreck, he was called Virgo. Recently there has been intelligence that Crocodile, one of the Shichibukai, seems to be plotting against Alabasta. Seeing that the wind was blowing wrong, Dustless immediately changed the topic and brought the problem to Crocodile. He didn't expect Akainu's dog nose to be so sensitive. Mentioning Crocodile immediately attracted Sengoku's attention. This snake lurking in the dark is far smarter than Doflamingo in broad daylight. At the same time, Doflamingo's ambition can only be bigger. Isn't that sand crocodile tamed by you? Where would he dare to come out and make trouble? Glancing at Dustless, Akainu said righteously. At the beginning of the Shichibukai meeting, Dustless took the opportunity to teach Crocodile an unforgettable lesson. Since then he has begun to tuck his tail between his legs. In recent years he has not done anything out of line, giving people a feeling of repentance. In short, Crocodile is now much more low-key than before. He gradually faded out of people's sight. The more he does this, the more he has a problem. Sengoku's eyes glowed with wisdom. When things are abnormal, there must be a demon. This is a truth that will never change. When Crocodile was young, he dared to challenge Whitebeard, who was still at his peak. Now that he is getting stronger and stronger, there is no reason for him to shrink back. That's right. Seeing that the topic returned to Crocodile, Dustless's mouth showed an untraceable arc. Now Caesar is hiding Dressrosa and secretly building Pluto. If it is discovered by Sengoku, it will be bad. After another round of greetings about evening, Dustless left Marlindo and went to Mariehua. In fact, Dustless quietly came to Dressrosa. In the luxurious palace, the cadres of the Don Quixote pirates were drunk, lying on the table without any image, or simply sleeping on the ground and snoring. Only Doflamingo was nowhere to be seen. Akainu's nose has smelled something wrong with Dressrosa. You should be careful in the future. As for the human body gigantification experiment, it is useless. Stop it. On the balcony, Dustless's figure was clearly visible, and his tone was resolute and irresistible. Everything is about value. If the human body gigantification experiment is profitable, Dustless will naturally choose to do it to the end, but in fact, it is useless. Doflamingo behind him was clearly visible. Although he was unwilling, he nodded wisely. Everything he had today was given to him by Dustless. After leaving Dustless, he will completely become a stray dog. No, saying that he is a stray dog is flattering. After all, a stray dog can still live, and without Dustless's protection, whether he can see the sun of the next day is a question. That's why Doflamingo can be so sensible. Chapter 651. Doflamingo was unwilling, but he could only hold it in and cursed Akainu, whose nose was sharper than a dog's dozens of times. Then he remembered that Caesar's experiment had not made any progress, and he was relieved. The human gigantism experiment requires a long period of observation. Doflamingo did not have the leisure time to waste, but he secretly hated Akainu in his heart. For this mad dog he was also very disgusted. The nickname Akainu came from this. Once he catches the enemy, no one can escape his nose that is sharper than a dog's. Maybe it wasn't Dustless's secret hindrance. Akainu had already come to the door. During this period, under the leadership of Doflamingo, they secretly visited the Pluton that Caesar was making. The exaggerated area, even Dustless couldn't help but be stunned after seeing it. It's no different from a moving steel island, and it's even better than that. The design of Pluton involves too much. The hardness and power of this super battleship are beyond imagination. According to Caesar's description, one shot can flatten an island at will. And the material used to build Pluton is very strange and extremely hard, which coincides with the stone carved with poneglyph and cannot be destroyed at all. This special material is not in Caesar's hands at present, so he can only choose other materials to replace it. Dustless wanted to melt the special material used to record the poneglyph, to make Pluton, but after thinking about it, the poneglyphs scattered all over the world are rare, and it will take several years to collect it, and it is not enough to cope with the huge project of Pluton. Dustless also needs Robin to interpret the right and wrong grievances from hundreds of years ago. Therefore, he accepted Caesar's suggestion and used other materials to temporarily replace it. Although the ability in all aspects has been reduced, the power is still shocking enough to destroy an island. After Dressrosa dawdled for a few more days, Dustless returned to Mariehua. After working hard for several days, Dustless also felt deeply tired. After a simple wash, he was about to sleep when Hancock ran to Dustless's bedroom with messy steps. She wasn't as elegant as she usually was, and she didn't even knock on the door. A day ago, Marine Headquarters retired Admiral Z led his trainee ship to be attacked by pirates. All crew members were killed except for him and 2 students. Z's proud arm was cut off. Hancock reported. Dustless's sleepiness instantly disappeared. He couldn't help but be curious as he asked, "Who did it?" Although that old man Z is over 60 years old, his body is still as strong as an ox. Was it done by the 4 emperors? Z is famous for his armament hockey. His perverted defense is well known all over the world. To be able to cut off Z's arm, one can imagine how much power it takes. Hancock shook her head, and her beautiful eyes looked strange. There were very few people who could do this, and without exception they were the kings of the sea. However, the instigator of this incident was unheard of. It seems to be called Edward Weevil, with a bounty of 480 million berries. Hancock's pretty face looked strange, and she tilted her head and spat out a cute little fragrance. His size and dress are similar to the Yonko 4 emperors, Whitebeard, but that guy's IQ is not high. There are rumors that he is Whitebeard's biological son. Edward Wilbur? He's probably a cameo. After thinking for a long time, Dustless didn't have the memory of this person. He took the newspaper from Hancock's hand and his personal information. Dustless remembered such a character. Once with overwhelming strength, he destroyed the recruit ship led by Z and annihilated all of them, and he also cut off Z's right arm. Is this guy really Whitebeard's son? Hancock asked. Edward Weevil in the information is completely different from Whitebeard except for his beard and physique, and the weapons he uses are close to Whitebeard. But the most speechless thing is that this guy turned out to be a moron. It doesn't matter if he is Whitebeard's son. As a pirate, and with a bounty of 480 million berries, he can cut off Z's arm, which shows that his strength is at least at the level of an admiral. It doesn't matter whose son it is, this world is full of bloodlines. If he is not an ability user, he can cut off Z's arm with his own strength. It is estimated that his strength should be at the level of Whitebeard. Dustless was convinced. There was a little surprise in his words. This character that he had never heard of was like a stone that stirred up 1,000 waves. The eyes of the whole world are probably focused on him. In the past, Wu Qin and Z fought several times. Although Z suppressed him every time, it didn't mean that Z didn't live up to his name. Purely using armament hockey, the only one in the Marine who can match him is Garp. In other words, it's not that Z is too weak, it's that Edward Weevil is too strong. The only pity is that his wisdom is not high, only comparable to a child of a few years old. Sengoku is going to go berserk. Dustless touched his chin and laughed. Even if Z's influence is not as good as the hero of the Marine Vice Admiral Garp, he is still a famous figure. Akainu, Akiji, Kizaru, and the future Vice Admirals, most of them are Z's students. If Sengoku doesn't come up with a reasonable explanation, it will be difficult to calm the anger of these students. It's not only the Marine headquarters that can't swallow this, it's also a shock to the whole world. The right arm of a retired admiral was cut off by a pirate. This is already related to the prestige of the Marine. Sengoku naturally can't just muddle through. He and Z are comrades of the same period. Their relationship is better than brothers. It's destined that Sengoku can't swallow this insult. Rumble. As soon as his voice fell, the Den Den Mushi on the table rang. Looking at it, it's the Den Den Mushi used by Sengoku and Dustless. The rumble's sound has the smell of gunpowder. Dustless can already see the pig liver color of Sengoku. Chapter 652. The Den Den Mushi's expression was fierce. It's not difficult to see how angry Fleet Admiral Sengoku was. In the past, the arm of a Marine admiral was cut off. There must be a limit to his arrogance and barbarism. That damn pirate must pay the price. The moment he picked up the Den Den Mushi, Sengoku's hysterical roar came over, and this look of resentment seemed to jump out from the Den Den Mushi. Think about it, Z is not only a close friend of Sengoku but to some extent, like Garp, he symbolizes the face of the Marine. Don't be impatient, don't forget that you are a Marine Fleet Admiral, you have to keep a poker face at all times. Dustless quietly sipped his tea and calmly said, "The one who was cut off is your subordinate and close friend, what will you do?" Sengoku asked in a low and hoarse voice, his tone was full of violence. As a Fleet Admiral, he really has to keep a poker face and not be seen through by others. However, there is a saying that the law is nothing more than human feelings, and Sengoku is not heartless. It depends on the person. With a deep light in his eyes, Dustless gave an ambiguous answer. For example, if someone like Hawkeye is killed one day, Dustless doesn't mind avenging him. As for Doflamingo, this kind of alien, not whipping his body after death is already too easy for him. By the way, is that guy really Whitebeard's son? This is interesting, the son of the old Whitebeard is an imbecile. Is this karma? Dustless said with interest. Imbecile? Sengoku's face turned green and he was dissatisfied. The imbecile you said almost killed an admiral. If he can give birth to such an imbecile, I don't think Whitebeard will mind having a few more. Sengoku said angrily, although Z is old and his strength is not as good as before, he is still a Marine admiral. What I said is the truth. That guy's brain is indeed lacking something. He didn't expect Sengoku to care so much about Z. Then he frowned and said, Z didn't lose to him unjustly. That guy's body is not right. There are several shocking scars on his body. His head and hands seem to have been cut off, but he is still alive. It sounded like a fantasy story, but that was the truth. There was even a photo as proof, so there was no room for quibbling. In the photo sent by Hancock, Edward Weevil's neck and arms were clearly visible. Apparently they had been cut off by something sharp, but strangely they overlapped. This meant that he had some kind of extraordinary healing ability. This guy is surprisingly similar to Kaido the 100 Beast. Carefully looking at the tall man in the photo, Dustless immediately thought of 100 Beast Kaido. Although there was a difference in ability, his physique and all kinds of wounds all over his body were clearly visible. They were all veterans. However, you should have a deeper meaning for coming to me, Sengoku. Dustless asked bluntly. Even if the Marine headquarters really wants to deal with Edward Weevil, the task can be handed over to Kizaru and Akiji in the New World. Dustless is far away in Mariehua. As a result, it may delay the opportunity. Sengoku is such a smart person, naturally, it is impossible for him to make a mistake. Hearing this, Sengoku, who was far away in the Marine headquarters, immediately nodded slightly. He did have other purposes. Although that guy is strong. In the end, he is just a little kid who has not seen the world. His brain is not enough and he is easy to control. Sengoku said. Dustless's eyes flashed. After a little thought, he understood what Sengoku meant. Are you going to recruit him into the organization? 7 Warlords of the Sea? Dustless said straightforwardly. Dustless couldn't help but look gloomy. Even though the relationship with Z was extremely unharmonious, he felt that it was not worth it for him at the moment. Z dedicated his life to the Marine and the whole world. But this world mercilessly abandoned Z. That's not what I mean. For that bullshit, Whitebeard too, I can't wait to tear him to pieces. His eyes were filled with killing intent, and the desk in front of Sengoku instantly burst into powder. I'm also helpless. This is what Mariehua and the other 5 meant. Their authority is above everything. In the end, I am just a Marine Fleet Admiral. In the end, Sengoku's tone was full of loneliness. In an instant he was dozens of years older, revealing deep helplessness. That indescribable special feeling, through the den mushi, fell into Dustless's ears one by one. Dustless couldn't help but look up and sigh. Sengoku was telling the truth. He was just a Marine Fleet Admiral. At most, he was an employee with more power. At some times, the so-called Marine is more like a scapegoat. Dustless can also understand the idea of the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars. With such a powerful high-end combat power and a bad brain easy to fool, it is indeed the most appropriate to pull him into the 7 Warlords of the Sea. At present there is only 1 seat left in the Shichibukai: Crocodile, Gecko Moria, Tyrant Kuma, Doflamingo, Hawkeye and Jinbe. If Edward Wilbur joins it will be enough. As for the original Empress, Boa Hancock, she has become Dustless's maid. What do you think of this proposal? Sengoku asked expectantly. Hearing this, Dustless's thoughts quickly changed, calculating the gains and losses. After about a few seconds of silence, he licked his dry and cracked lips, and his hesitant eyes shone with awe-inspiring luster. Sorry, Sengoku, I refuse this proposal. I can't accept Edward Wilbur as a Shichibukai. This is not an exchange between superiors and subordinates, but an order issued by the celestial dragons. His eyes were as calm as stagnant water. Dustless made a wise judgment. He had already thought of a candidate for the last Shichibukai position. As for Edward Wilbur, he should go home and play with mud. Chapter 653. Hearing the solemn voice coming from the other side of the den mushi, Sengoku couldn't help but stare. This slightly magnetic and full of reason tone is obviously not a joke. Dustless will not agree with Edward Weevil to become a Shichibukai. Although he doesn't know the reason, Sengoku heard Dustless's unshakable tone. Obviously, even if the Gorosei came in person, Dustless will not change his point of view. When he was about to ask what the reason is, Sengoku suddenly thought about it and shut up. This is the scene he wants to see. There is no need to ask for trouble. If the Gorosei are not happy, let them find trouble with the celestial dragons. Sengoku also has the mentality of being a shopkeeper. He put the ball in the Gorosei's court. That's what it means to be a superior. If the Gorosei have any dissatisfaction, they can find Dustless, who is a celestial dragons, to vent their anger. Didn't you want to pull that guy into the Shichibukai? Now you want to kill him. On the blue sea, several marine battleships were moving quickly. Kizaru, who turned off the den mushi, was puzzled. At first he received the order to pull Edward Weevil into the Shichibukai, but now Sengoku asked to kill him directly. The contrast between before and after is too big. What the final decision is, that's a game for the big guys to play. We just need to obey the result. Stretching lazily, Akiji took off the blindfold on his eyes and stood up from the couch. Unlike usual, his eyes were dotted with cold light at the moment. For Z, he was grateful to him and treated him like a teacher. It's terrible. Kizaru's eyes fell on Akiji and his mouth whispered. Full of indifference, everyone knows that Z and Kizaru are the most disharmonious in the teacher-student relationship. If one day Kizaru accepts the task of killing Z everywhere, he will definitely execute it without mercy. That guy's body is almost indestructible. Be careful when you meet him. I heard that his strength is almost on par with the young Whitebeard. Kizaru's old face was cautious. Akiji also nodded solemnly. The person who can cut off Z's arm is at least at the same level as them. In order to avoid repeating the tragedy of Z, Sengoku sent Akiji and Kizaru at the same time. Only in this way can he feel confident. On the other side, the atmosphere was also very strange. Inside the luxurious villa, the lights were intertwined and colorful. The exquisite crystal chandelier was full of nobility. It was such a beautiful scene, but no one appreciated it. Instead, it was filled with the smell of gunpowder. Dustless was sitting on the sofa with a tranquil expression. His hands were carefully flipping through the books, and from time to time, he would lower his head and ponder. As for the bald Quelder stars and white Taoist robes, he had already put them aside. Back then, Dustless had used a scheme to steal the first-generation ghost blade from him, so they could be considered acquaintances. That guy is very stupid. He is the top fighting force that the government is looking for. In the future we can even completely control him. It is unwise to kick him out of the position of Shichibukai. The bald Quelder stars was dissatisfied. Because of Dustless's verbal order, their world government's plan, which had been painstakingly managed for a long time, collapsed in an instant. Hearing this, Dustless just raised his head and glanced at him faintly and continued to look down at the book. The content of the book was quite simple. It was the distribution and structure of the entire world's islands. But it looked more interesting than the old man's words. "Louis South, please give me a reason that is enough to convince this old man." Seeing Dustless ignoring him one after another, the voice of the bald Quelder stars was raised by several decibels, with a hint of anger. As one of the highest powers in the world, he was ignored by this kid. How can he feel good? Didn't I say that's an order? There is no reason. An order is an order. Continuing to look down at the book, he didn't look up from the beginning to the end. The whisper sounded in the ears of the bald Quelder stars. Dustless had a look of indifference. Although the Quelder stars are actually the lackeys of the celestial dragons, the 5 of them are obviously complying with the celestial dragons. Realizing that their wings are hard, they want to abandon their master and fly alone. The old face of the bald Quelder stars collapsed. He wanted to refute but was speechless. This ridiculous reason made him speechless because the law stipulates so. The celestial dragons are above all things in the world, and any law that binds human beings has no effect on them. Don't ask more, it is your duty to listen and execute. Touching the sides of his eyes, Dustless seemed a little tired. He waved his hand and asked them to leave. The bald Quelder stars could only stare and leave. "Master, you are too much of a bully." Seeing the maid of the bald Quelder stars leave, Hancock, dressed in a black maid dress, rushed out of the darkness, and her exquisite figure was vividly highlighted. She rubbed Dustless's shoulders very knowingly. "Do you think it's too much?" Dustless asked calmly. Hearing the words, Hancock gently nodded. This unreasonable bandit logic is completely suppressing people. Of course, Dustless's strength is also what the Quelder stars are most afraid of. The orders of the celestial dragons are never justified, they are just to satisfy their own selfish desires. Closing the book in his hand, Dustless said naturally, "The celestial dragons are like this. Orders are orders, they don't need any reason, they are only responsible for the execution." Dustless will not be bored enough to reason with the Quelder stars. He is completely relying on his superior identity to suppress people, even if they are not convinced they can't do anything. Because the law made by the Quelder stars is based on the supremacy of the celestial dragons. "You are forcing them," Hancock reminded him. A cornered dog would jump over a wall. One day in the future, it was possible that the 5 elder stars would do some crazy things if they were driven crazy. At least they are far from crazy now. Shrugging, Dustless said indifferently. Chapter 654. In this regard, Hancock can't deny that Mariehua Tenryubito temperament is like this. They do everything according to their own will, as for motivation they don't need it at all. Through the balcony glass, seeing the bald Gorosei 5 elder stars, leaving in anger, Hancock couldn't help but sigh. To put it bluntly, they used their identity and status to suppress you, and there was nothing they could do about it. The celestial dragons were the biggest arbitrators in the world. Whoever he said was wrong was wrong. Reversing black and white, pointing a deer as a horse was what they were best at. It's useless to resist. After all, the world government and the Tenryubito behind the scenes have existed for more than 800 years. During this period there have been countless rebellions, but they were all cruelly suppressed in the end. Even if the 5 honored stars refused to accept this, they would only make some small moves in private. If they brazenly went against them, only death would await them. In the future, Doflamingo, who has no rights, can make the world government hesitate. Dustless, who has great power, naturally makes the Gorosei 5 elder stars more afraid. In short, Z will eat this loss. Dustless whispered. An admiral of the Marine headquarters, his right arm was cut off. He is most proud of his superb armament hockey, so he also has the nickname Black Wrist. The blow to him can be imagined. Do you want to tame that old man? Dustless's eyes flashed with a bright light, and he suddenly had an idea in his heart. Regenerating a severed arm is a fantasy for others, but for him, it's a trivial matter. Dustless can even bring the dead back to life easily. It was because he promised Nico Robin to resurrect her mother that she obediently went to Dustless's ship. That stubborn old man, forget it. Shaking his head, Dustless immediately denied the idea. Rashly contacting Z will only bring shame to himself. Dustless has already heard of the old man's strict and stubborn temper, and he will certainly be rejected without hesitation and ridiculed. But then again, Akiji and Kizaru will join forces to deal with Edward Wilbur. Dustless's heart splashed with faint ripples. After a few seconds it calmed down again. The generals joined forces to deal with Edward Wilbur. From this, one could see how strong Edward Wilbur was. His strength was enough to blow away a town, and his weapon was the same as Whitebeard's. It was not an exaggeration to say that he was Whitebeard's son. Hancock nodded. Fortunately, he was just a simple child. His wisdom was only as high as that of an 8 or 9-year-old child. Otherwise the future Yonko might have changed. As for whether Akiji and Kizaru are opponents, Dustless doesn't know. Whoever lives or dies has nothing to do with him. The only thing he cares about is the position of Shichibukai. With the mentality of watching a play, let them make trouble. In the blink of an eye, 5 days had already passed. Dustless originally thought that the 5 Elder Stars were unwilling to give up and secretly used some small tricks. They had even made preparations for a follow-up move. However, the entire sea was calm and tranquil these days. Z's consciousness has awakened. In the Fleet Admiral's office, Sengoku breathed a sigh of relief. His pale face squeezed out a few far-fetched smiles. His eyes were cloudy and he looked very tired and listless. Before celebrating Z's recovery, I think you should thank me. Dustless's untimely whisper fell into everyone's ears and the atmosphere suddenly stiffened. Thank you? Sengoku wondered. If it wasn't for Dustless's interference, Edward Wilbur would have become Shichibukai, and would be famous all over the world. I'm talking about other aspects. Looking at Sengoku's eyes, Dustless was sure that this old guy was thinking crooked. Then he shook his finger and said with deep meaning. These words made a group of Marine executives look at each other and they were confused. I mean, once Edward Weevil joins the 7 warlords of the sea, what do you think Z will do? Dustless went straight to the point. Sengoku's expression solidified. If it was before he wouldn't doubt Z, but after several pirate attacks, Z's heart and will have slowly changed. Sengoku was sure that after Edward Wilbur became Shichibukai, Z would leave the Marine and even stand on the opposite side of the entire Marine. Sengoku's heart was filled with emotions. His best friend who fought side by side with him may give up his former ties at any time for some reason and turn to stand on the opposite side. Don't you have to thank me, Sengoku? Seeing Sengoku wake up from his dream, Dustless said with a smile. Hearing this, Sengoku just raised his head and glanced at Dustless, then he simply ignored him. His eyes fell on Kizaru and Akiji. He frowned and asked, You two joined forces and still let him run away? Sengoku looked at Kizaru and Akiji. The 2 admirals joined forces and still let the enemy run away. Although they left him with wounds, it still didn't make sense. Akiji shrugged his shoulders and showed a helpless look. Edward Wilbur is an ability user and he has a strong healing ability. It's not easy to kill him. Even when Akiji and Kizaru fought, they cut off his arm but it was still strangely connected. This is bad luck. Sengoku's old face turned into a pig's liver color as he cursed in his heart. He originally expected to capture Edward Wilbur alive and kill him to avenge Z, but he didn't expect the kid's ability to be so strong and finally let him run away. Dustless sipped his tea quietly until the end of the meeting. He didn't speak as if he was just going through the motions. Now the 3 admirals are the pillars of the Marine. An outsider like him naturally doesn't need to interrupt. Life or death doesn't matter to him. He is just a bystander. After the situation derails, he will lead him back to the track he set. You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.